He said he hasn't chugged anything in a long time. I mean, Buddy's been sober, 3 years now, and you're not really chugging anything else. I guess water, you can chug water. All right, it's going down, and there it is. Good time.
Oh, I handled that way better than I thought I would.
On today's episode of the Grab Matters podcast, we welcome on a recurring guest, very special guest, good friend of mine, Dylan Mead, a.k.a. Backwards Boards. And on this episode, me and him are kind of going back and forth. We're diving into a lot about our relationship in the past, filming for the ZMT movies, getting some street clips. We're talking winching. He asked me quite a few questions about the podcast itself, some of the ins and outs of the operations of what I've been doing over the past couple of years with Grab Matters. We're also talking events. We've run a couple events in the past, Rockford Ripfest at West Rock. We talk about kind of the goal behind that, what we like about events like that, what we didn't like about some of the other events that we saw at the time. We're also talking about what events we're looking forward to in 2025. We've got some new ones that are coming out, some ones that are making a triumphant return to the season, to the wakeboard season in 2025. So we're talking about which ones we're most excited for. We also talk about what Dylan's doing with his life right now. He's kind of shifted a little bit out of the board sports world and more of a kind of business owner, entrepreneurship type vibe right now. So we're talking about what he's doing. And we touch on an interesting concept that Dylan kind of came up with called progression of a hater that I think is very relevant in the board sports world. You can kind of relate it to life, but we dive pretty deep into that. And I think it's pretty interesting to relate to the board sports world. So as always, I want to give a huge thank you to all the Patreon supporters, everybody that subscribes to the Patreon. Your guys' support is literally what keeps this podcast going. So thank you all for being on the Patreon. Thank you for submitting questions. The questions are always great. So thanks to everybody who is on there and submits questions. If you do want to support the podcast, joining the Patreon is the best way to do that. So thank you to all the Patreon members. Without further ado, let's get into episode 79 of the Grab Matters podcast.
I approve waterboarding. They're talking about wakeboarding. The thing about wakeboarding, every trick is an invert.
Backside.
One side, air railings.
A new dimension.
All right. Well, we're back. Another episode of the Grab Matters podcast. Today, we're doing something a little bit different, kind of the same. We've had Dylan on before, so it's going to be me, Hunter, and Dylan Mead. He was episode, 6 or something, maybe even before that. Back when this podcast was a shell of itself, and I had no idea what I'm doing. Not that I know what I'm doing now, but
First 5 in your apartment back in Grand Rapids. I went back and rewatched the reel the other day, and you can see as the clips progress, it gets darker and darker. Yeah, because we were just using natural light. Yep.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing there. But
Setting up the set each episode.
Yep. Yeah, that's a not sustainable way to do a podcast, by the way, to just travel all over the place. So anyways, it's going to be kind of not a formal interview as a lot of these are, which, I mean, they're not super formal, but we're going to be kind of shooting the shit. We go way back. We have a lot of wakeboard memories and life memories together, so we're going to be kind of diving through those. We're going to be answering some Patreon questions, going to spin the LF'n wheel of questions, obviously. So I think to start it off, we got some Patreon questions. We got one from Campbell Scarborough. And I think she's been doing some winching, not sure, but her question is, wildest kick-out story while filming for the ZMT movies?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I hit on this one on my first episode, so I'll recap for anybody who hasn't seen that, and then I'll maybe try to think of a second one.
Yeah.
So, number one, this was a trip. It was filming at the end of P2, and this was actually a really sick trip. My dad, let us stay in his camper and towed his camper with the truck. And it was me, Gibby, Hannah, and Wes Huber. And then Clark Davis joined for a day or two. But we were in Tennessee on the tail end of the trip. And it just wasn't going great. People were getting hurt. Vibes were down. Wes cut his arm open the day before. But we rock up to this spot that's very clearly in an HOA. It was not the sickest spot. We're hitting it, whatever. This, Karen starts yelling at us. She's like, blah, 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 do you live here? And we're all kind of over it. I'm just like, no. But just Gibby, run the winch. Let's just keep going. It's kind of okay, we're here on a winch trip. Let's just get some stuff done. And then a few tries later, she comes down and is fully freaking out. Oh, this is funny. The last time I told this story was definitely on this episode.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah. But she's fully freaking out, as much as anybody's going to freak out. But also it's we're over it. We've been kicked out a bunch the last 10 days. We're not really tripping. It's the end of the season. It's starting to get cold. And she's standing on the winch rope. You're not going to go. There's no way. And I'm like, well, I have to get back to the winch. And she kind of calls my bullshit and is well, you don't. You'll figure out another way to get it in. And I'm like, Gibby, start the winch. And attaboy, Grom Gibby at the time, probably 15 years old, starts the winch. I go, I get the trick. It's sick. You can hear her chirping in the background.
What trick was this?
This was Backlip same way, and actually that didn't make the movie. It went in Discarded Matter. Yeah, it was just it wasn't the sickest. Yeah, and everyone should check out Discarded Matter because that was just I didn't want to put out like an hour-long film when we made P2, but it's like 15, 20 minutes long, and it's actually really good. It's only got a few hundred views. Yeah, it's got some good winching in there, just all the leftovers. But and then we're going back to the car, and full on her like dad or husband, I don't know, somebody who's like an older gentleman comes out in like a flannel shirt, just incredibly innocent looking and like super chill. And is like, you're gonna stop right there, whatever they said. And I was just kind of like, oh, and we're packing up at this point. Like we're trying to leave. I got I got the clip. Like we actually clipped up at that spot. I got like 3 or 4 clips. So we're just trying to leave. And he's like, you're gonna stop right there, and the girl's like, you're gonna go to jail. Like, cops are going to come and you're going to go to jail. And it's like, well, no, we're going to leave. And then we'll be gone is actually what's going to happen. And we were pretty much just saying it like that. And she was not hyped on that. So the dude comes out and, like, pulls this little revolver out of his pocket. And he kind of, like, shows it to me, like, flexes it. And I was just like, dude, like, shoot me. Like, there's other, like, come on. Like, we're trying to leave right now. You're bummed because we're trespassing. We're trying to leave.
Europeans listening to this right now are like, what the fuck? Yeah. Homie's got a gun?
Yeah, and I don't know. It was just, it didn't seem all that threatening. But then we're trying to get back to the car. He's, like, holding on to me. Like, Gibby and Hannah rock up to their van. And at the time, too, to paint the scene a little bit for people who know Gibby and Hannah now, at the time, they both had dreadlocks, and we were in Hannah's, like, you know, multi-passenger minivan with like a kicker on top. It looked it looked like a sketchy setup all around. So the girl starts like yelling for like help. All the neighbors come outside. And the neighbors just like hear this person that they know screaming for help. And then they see these kind of, you know, on the surface, sketchy looking people, which is hilarious because they're the nicest humans ever. Yeah. Trying to load this weird contraption into the back of a minivan. So that happened. And the neighbors honestly did a fantastic job blocking us from getting in the car. Basically, long story short, it was a whole kerfluffle. Like, they, like, knocked me onto the ground. I flopped. Tried to just, I was like, Hannah, film this. Yeah. It was a good flop. We got a couple rolls out of it. But, yeah, it was just a whole ordeal. And then as we're just sitting on the curb waiting for the cops to come, because they did a really efficient job, like, creating a barricade so we couldn't get the winch in the car. So like they just won. They did it. Like we couldn't leave without the winch, and it wasn't even our winch. It was Morgan's winch. It was a Grinch winch. Shout out Morgan.
Yeah, owner of Elevated.
Yep. Thank you for that. There's been a lot of clips on that winch. So then we just waited for the cops to show up, and meanwhile the neighbors are like asking us about what we did and like asking, you know, the neighbor that they know why she's so pissed, and they start to realize like, oh my God, we just pushed like a 15-year-old on the ground and stopped these people from leaving because they like maybe scratched some paint off a dock, and then we're trying to leave. So all the neighbors were like, oh, shit. Meanwhile, this Karen girl is still like, you're still going to jail.
Yeah, she's spiraling.
She's just fuming. It's like the most entertainment she's had all week. She's loving it. And then, eventually the cops show up, and they're just like, I mentioned that he pulled a gun on us. He's like, oh, my God, they had a gun? He's like, and the cops basically like, do you want to press charges? And I was like, no, we want to leave.
Yeah.
So it ended up like, resolving pretty chill. The head of the HOA was super cool. It was just that one Karen and her dad or boyfriend or whatever who was super duper not hyped. Yeah. I'm
trying to think. I don't think I've ever been kicked out of a spot. I mean, you've
really
been winching with me pretty much every time we've gone that I've ridden, and I don't remember ever getting kicked out.
I guess maybe we can this would be a good, like, just segue into hitting a couple, like, random winch stories. So this one spot right in the beginning of filming for P2, you've seen this spot, like, beat to death if you follow the North Carolina crew. It's just these two, like, banana up ledges. They're not close enough where you can banana them, but you can hit them as an up ledge or a down ledge. They've been hitting P2. They were hitting Huber's new movie. They've been hit a bunch, like Cosmic Cahoots, the Space Tapes video. But the very first time we ever went there, we get back there, we're setting everything up, we're grinding down the ledge because it's the first time we're hitting it, probably grinding for like 30 minutes, and a cop walks back there. And like, you got to walk through some woods to get there.
Yeah, it's out there.
And the cop immediately is just like, you know, we kind of all stop what we're doing. And Matt is like hiding in the hallway, like moving the kicker. I got like a, you know, concrete grinder. There's dust flying up. Like, it's a whole operation we got going back there. And the cop rolls up and, you know, kind of hands on his hip is like, so what you guys got going on here? And I was like, oh, and I just start talking. He's like, so let me just stop you right there. you guys made me walk through the woods, and I don't like that. So you're already off to a bad start. I don't like having to traverse through these woods to do my job, and you guys made me do that today. All right, so now you can
God forbid you get out of the car, buddy.
Yeah. So he's like, now you can tell me what you're doing. And I'm like, well, we're filming this movie about unique architecture near water, which is not a lie.
Not entirely false, yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, well, do you have permission to be here? And I was like, no. I'm like, does it really seem like an issue though? And he's like, how long do you think you're going to be here? And I was like, 30 minutes tops. He's like, okay, you got 30 minutes and then get out of here. We proceeded to stay there for like 5 hours and clip up. And then we realized to park in a different parking lot, and now we're golden. We've hit that spot dozens of times.
That spot has been hit a lot.
That spot has been hit a lot, yeah. Ooh, another good one. I don't remember if we talked about this on the last episode or not, but it was also while filming for P2, so the ZMT thing. Dang, I got a couple of these.
P2 had a lot happen.
Yeah. But it was during COVID. And I cruised up to Michigan because Michigan kind of flooded, and we're hitting this like private boat dock. Basically, long story short, this kayaker who was part of the HOA there was super not hyped that we were there. But the head of the HOA who had the keys thought it was awesome. Like his kid rode at Action.
Is this the elbow, the concrete elbow?
Yeah,
okay.
He's like, this is super cool. Right on. And he unlocked the gate for this kayaker. So the kayaker just kind of like mean mugs us and goes and kayaks, and we proceed to hit the spot for like an hour. And then he comes back in and is like, okay, now it's time to leave. And we're like, well, no. Like
we're chilling.
Yeah, we're chilling. What are you talking about? And he did the smartest thing I've ever had somebody do. He walked out with a knife to the rope and was gonna cut the rope. And I was like, that's actually really smart. You know, good for you. So we crank up the winch. Shout out Gibby again on the winch start. And I got the clip then too. It wasn't a great clip. Most of these aren't great, but
clips are clips.
Yep.
Yeah,
those are solid ones. Yeah, I guess we can keep it cruising. Maybe we'll circle back around to a couple more. But yeah, thanks for the question, Campbell. I appreciate that. I'd be curious to hear any of her kick-out stories.
Yeah, if she's been kicked out.
If she's got any. Yeah. Who knows?
One day I'll ask her for sure.
There we go.
I mean, we got another one from Jacob Sunday that's in winching, and he's wondering what has been your favorite winch spot and favorite winching moment, and then obviously least favorite to go on the other side of that though. But yeah, favorite spot. I mean, what's the favorite spot? Either you hit or filmed.
Yeah, I mean. So a very easy one that I filmed was for sure. I didn't film it. I guess I took a couple photos of it. But Dylan Miller, he hit that giant bird cage in his real wake part. He does a cab 270 and kind of bonks the end of it. I had been looking at that spot since I was like 14, and just that whole day was amazing. It was the crew was Trevor Bashir, Brendan Priestley, and Dylan Miller. And I just met them at that spot. Heater squad. And they're like looking at the spot, and Dylan's like, yeah, I think I'll hit it. And I'm just like, are you kidding? That's amazing. They had this massive kicker that had to be like equivalent to an XL basically, which is what you need to get up there. We've been talking about
this thing is huge.
We've been talking about going back. Like I want Jake to hit the whole thing. And he's like, yeah, we would just need to bring the XL. And we're like talking to Morgan. We're like, can we get the XL loaded up on the trailer? He's like, yeah, I think so. For sure. He's like, can we back it into the water? I'm like, not great, but yeah. He's like, yeah, we'll make it happen. Yeah. So yeah, they like set all that up. It was just super hectic. And dude, it was so poetic too. To keep it relatively brief, he's hitting this spot for 2 hours, getting bodied like bail. And
there's a lot of bail clips. Yeah,
there's a couple bails in the part. There may be like a raw files type vibe too. But we hear like thunder, like super gnarly thunder crack, and it's like very obviously about to storm. It's like 4 p.m. This was in North Carolina, but if you ever been in Florida in the summer, it's like every single day at 4 p.m. Like when the it's going to thunderstorm. So it's like, oh shit, he's got one, maybe two more tries.
Things coming in.
Yeah. Real quickly, like Trevor was standing on my shoulders and moved the pulley for the winch an extra like 2 feet higher in the tree. Next try, Dylan laces it. We all celebrate. 2 minutes later, absolute downpour, thunder everywhere. And just that spot really turned me on, and I was like, oh, this is possible. And it was just a winching 101. That was just such a beautiful moment. And that's one of the gnarliest spots that's ever been done. And that was the first and probably only photo I got published in Alliance. Like Kraken bought it for an ad, or they tried to buy it, and I was like 18 at the time, so I'm like, I'll just have it. Classic.
Could have got $100 or $200 there, dude.
Yeah, a couple stickers at least. I actually think I did get a sticker pack. Oh,
There you go, dude. Sticker pack, always worth it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
And then as far as
favorite moment,
yeah, for me riding, it was for sure my ender of P2, back threeing down the spillway. In Illinois. Yeah, that was just so sick. It was a really good crew. It was me, Graham, and JB. So obviously they were pushing me to like do gnarly stuff. And it was just kind of like a hectic, emotional day at the end of a long trip. And it was like, if you've been on trips like that, you know, it's just like everyone's got super short fuses. It's just like, it's hectic and a lot of emotions. And basically the day and like that trip for me was capped off by doing a back three down that spillway, which for me like really felt like pushing it. At the time, it felt like something relatively gnarly for such a big spillway. It felt out of my league a little bit. And I handled it and got the clip, and it was amazing. And I just remember that feeling of like hitting the bottom and then going into a butter slide and just like throwing my hands up and falling back, and just the amount of water and moss that was on the spillway at the time. It was a landing ramp. Like you could have done a Red Bull step down event there, straight up.
Yeah.
Like it was soft. I slid down it on my back a couple times, just like t-shirt, no vest, and I had like some scrapes, but I slid down concrete for 250 feet and like could keep trying it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was for sure my favorite winching moment. And there's been a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of just gnarly stuff in general. I had a sick day winching with Sunday, man. Me and Jake picked him up out of the airport in Charlotte to take him back to Elevated one day, and didn't even tell him, and just brought the winch. And he's like, gets off this probably flight all the way from California, probably like a 6-hour flight. And we're just like, yeah, we're going to a spot. And he's kind of like, okay, like, you know,
Groggy,
like, all right, cool. We rock up to the spot, dude. He just like drops his pants and he just had board shorts underneath.
He's ready to go.
I'm like, dude, you just do that all the time. He's like, yeah, you got to stay ready. Yeah. But yeah, Jake got absolutely smoke showed that day, trying something really gnarly at a super gnarly spot, just classic Jake vibes. And then Sunday actually had like a really cool hit at a spot that we've hit quite a few times. That's not that far from the airport. And really just like showed out on the gas winch and got a super
Where's this clip at? Do we know where this is?
I think it's at the end of, it's at the end of probably his elevated part, or he posted it to the gram. It's posted. I'll get it to you.
Yeah,
but basically, it's two flat ledges, and it's an amazing spot. Clark Davis has wake skated at this spot a bunch. There's a few clips of it. Logan, what's little Logan's last name?
Kaz of something. Gui Baton.
Yeah, there we go.
That's his Instagram.
He hit it in Nature of Offense, looking like just the weest of groms, dude. I went back and watched it the other day. It was so sick.
Yeah, it was sick.
Yeah. So it's a really cool spot, like these marble ledges, and he hit one, and then there's maybe, I don't know, probably 8 feet in between the two, but at 20 miles an hour, 8 feet is not a lot. Yeah. So it's literally like you land and then pop at the same time. So I think he went front board and then hop in the middle of them to front board the next one to like same way too.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah, okay. And it's kind of gnarly, just like any other winch spot or anything scary that somebody can do. When you're there in person, you know, on the surface, it's like, oh, this is like a knee-high spot, pretty chill. But it's like, dude, you could like break your shin bones. Like you could break a tibia here. Like if you just don't make the ollie and you nose pick just straight into a marble ledge. Yeah. But yeah, Sunday showed out there. That was a sick day.
Hard surfaces for sure. Yeah, I think he's been doing some winching too. It looks like he was looking to building a kicker, so hopefully some exciting stuff coming from him.
Yeah, there we go.
I mean, least favorite moment winching. I don't know. That's getting kicked out is another one. Good slams. They're least favorite moments.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Jake that day. I got a few with Jake, just like filming for Jake. That's. Since the last episode, my winching career has been way more filming Jake. And you know what? I have a few of my own since our last episode too, because there's a reason I mostly just film Jake now. So we went to this spillway. It's just like a really money, like down spillway that I've been looking at forever. And Jake kind of like wallied into it and honestly slid down the whole thing on his head, but was fine. And I had just really big hype for myself. I'm like, I'm just going to straight air and just gap halfway down this thing. I'm just going to go super fast. We had the moto winch. And we just had our friend Brian, who like, shout out Brian. He's absolutely the man. I think he called out for work for the day and came and helped us, or maybe just extended lunch break vibes.
Yeah.
But he didn't have a bunch of reps driving the winch, and that was a tough controller if you know kind of the prototype moto winch controllers, which I'm sure a few of the people watching this do. There's just like lines you have to match it up with. So the weight difference between me and Jake was decent, probably 40 pounds.
Yeah.
And I told him to go fast, and anyway, I didn't go that fast. I go to jump down this thing, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to slide down. It's super money. Like, I don't even have to be back foot heavy. I immediately flip over. I scrape all the skin off my knuckles, like down to the bone. I got a clip. We'll throw it in there. It's on the gram. And that just sucked. It took me like 4 months before I could make a fist again. And then, of course, because I'm an idiot, I went snowboarding the next day and put it in my like 6-year-old glove, so it got infected. So then I was dealing with an infected finger, and then that's when I went to Tahoe and filmed that snowboard video and just had like a really messed up knuckle. If anyone has ever messed up their like knuckle or elbow and got a really gnarly like scrape on it, it just takes forever to heal. And it's like duh, but when it happens to you, it really sucks.
Yeah.
That sucked. That was up there with the least favorite moments. That was a bummer.
Okay.
But at the time, I was just laughing about it. I don't know, like my nails painted at the time, and I was all hyped to get a clip with like blood dripping down.
I'm pretty sure there was like a zoom in onto that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering, did you have a helmet on for your ender? I know you didn't, but for this one where you fucked your knuckles up, did you?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I started just being more down to wear a helmet after that, and then for the most part, I think almost every time I've winched since, I've worn a helmet. Not literally every time, but for the most part.
Yeah, so, okay, let's talk bucket then.
Yeah.
Because we were talking earlier when we were coming back from ODUB, and you...
Yep.
Yeah, you want to chat bucket, so let's talk about it.
I don't have a super hot take, and I'm not going to tell anybody if they should wear a helmet or not, but I do feel like I've reflected quite a bit on my journey of just like how I feel about the helmet and kind of what it meant to me. I was listening to a clip on the Bomb Hole, which is a snowboarding podcast, and they had a group setting, and they had a core pro snowboarder who never wears a helmet, and they also had the founder of Save a Brain, which is a nonprofit that raises awareness for brain injuries and wearing helmets and things like that, and they both gave their take, and the pro snowboarder, the super core pro snowboarder, essentially condensed down was like, I just think I look better without the helmet. And I listened to that and was like, I relate to that, but it almost seems a little too simplistic to me. So I think when I was filming P2, there was a few reasons I felt like it made sense not to wear a helmet. But one thing that I've never heard anybody talk about, because the helmet thing gets brought up a fair bit if you're in board sports.
Almost the least in wakeboarding because you have to, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, but part of the reason I was okay with not wearing a helmet at the time is because I was just young. I was like 18, 19, 20, and I had just a lot of existential angst. Just in general, and like some suicidal thoughts, and didn't really know like where to put those, and they weren't serious enough where it was like significantly affecting my day-to-day life every day. There was maybe eras, like weeks at a time, that weren't so good, but for the most part, it was just this lingering thing in the back of my head, and not wearing a helmet was almost like a way of expressing that a little bit, right? Like you can go to a punk show and like get out some anger, or go to boxing classes, get out some anger, get smoked trying a new trick at the cable, and like feel some physical pain, but you're not letting it ruin your life. And like not wearing a helmet and doing sketchy things on a wakeboard was almost that outlet for me. It's like, and kind of naively too, I think it was almost like a little bit of just like a fuck you to the man or whatever at 19, like, you know, like screw your rules, screw just what you guys got going on. And it was just a way that I was able to express like how I was feeling at that point in my life. And I said out loud multiple times to different friends, and I really meant it when I said this at the time. If I were to die in my early 20s, and this is how I phrased it then too, like I'd like it to be winching. And, you know, just being young, and again, I didn't want to die. I didn't think about suicide every day, but I was just thinking, why is a long life inherently better than a short life? These are things that I think a lot of people, when they first have the thought outside of the kind of influence of their parents or their youthful support system, it is like, that is an interesting thought. Like, what does make a long life inherently better than a short life? So I was just thinking about a lot of these things, and doing sketchy stuff on a wakeboard without a helmet was a way for me to express that. And then also, with just, while we're being fully honest and vulnerable out here, it was a way for me to like make myself feel cooler and to make the mediocre tricks I was doing on a winch feel gnarlier. Like I literally hit a spot that Graham and JB did considerably cooler things than me, and they were wearing a vest and helmet because they're adults and care about their career and the longevity of their body and brain, which like shout out to that thought process. But I was like, I'm just going to hit the same spot without it. And they weren't too hyped. Like they were strongly encouraging me to put on a vest and helmet, and I basically just like didn't, and they still pulled me because, they
you're also an adult too. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, there was that part of it, but yeah, I just kind of wanted to share that and where I was coming from. And I mostly wear a helmet now, like almost all the time. We've been like taking laps at Elevated, like, super early season. It's like just homies. So it's kind of, like Morgan's always setting the example wearing a vest and a helmet, but, and I wear a helmet and vest every time, like with my wetsuit. Well, a helmet for sure.
Yeah.
The wetsuit's got a little flotation to it. But yeah, and also, there's another part of it too, just when you're riding every day, it's fun to up the danger a little bit, and it's like the rational way would just be like try a harder trick, but like an easier, lazier way to go about it is just like wear less protective equipment and feel a little more like rugged and raw, like the consequences are up a little bit. So yeah, I've just heard the helmet debate get talked about a lot, and I've never heard, that's just how it felt for me.
Yeah.
And I've never heard that opinion expressed and something I could identify with, so I just kind of wanted to share that and, yeah, just kind of share my journey about how I was feeling about the helmet. And, yeah, if I go do sketchy stuff now, also, it would be ignorant and silly for me to think that that's even a halfway good idea now, because when I was filming those parts and not wearing a helmet, I was wakeboarding every day. I spent the whole winter in the Philippines. I spent the last 4 summers living at cable parks, getting 200 plus days on a wakeboard.
Yeah, time on board was insane.
Yeah, so I felt really just like good in my craft. Now, what can happen in the streets winching is something can be underwater, something can snag you, and you can get smoked. And by like no fault of your own, the winch can break at a horrible time. Like you can be in a really bad spot. So yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at. I will be, if you really tried, you could probably find a clip of me in the future to super chill winch spot eventually, not wearing a helmet. But for the most part, I back the helmet now. I think it's just a natural progression of just like being an angsty teenager and human and just getting to do what you want.
Yeah, and I'm going to tease a segment coming up. Thank you for being vulnerable and talking about that, because that's an interesting aspect, because I feel like the non-helmet wearing crowd, their answer is like Sam Taxwood in that bomb hole episode where it's like, well, it just looks better. And I think that's a valid opinion to have. That's totally okay. Like maybe it's not a strong one, but like teach their own,
And that's kind of what I want to hit on. Thanks for bringing that back up, because part of the reason it looks better and it's cool is the same reason cigarettes are cool. Like to the majority of people, cigarettes are not cool. It's just like cancer. You don't care about yourself. You're just clearly going against tons of clinical data. Like that's silly. But there's that rebellious side of people, and like a certain segment of the population in a certain context, like they are cool. And cigarettes and, not wearing a helmet and even just like skate culture kind of has that, like, I don't care if I die doing this. Like, I love it so much. This is my whole life. And it's almost kind of like poetic, and it has like beatnik like vibes running through it, just living like very authentically and doing exactly what you want to do.
Yeah, I'm doing this for me.
Yeah, just living very much so in the moment. But yeah, to me, it's like it looks cooler because that person obviously doesn't care. And like that's cool in one context, especially from a younger, less matured viewpoint, which like I possessed for a long time, and I still possess like a lot of those things. Yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, it's just like it looks cool because that person obviously doesn't care. But if you take that to the next thing, it's like they obviously don't care about their own health and safety in life. And like then it's not cool anymore when you finish the thought.
Yeah. And the thing I'll touch on in this is, I mean, I always firmly believe you do whatever you want, and as long as you understand and know the consequences, like it's your parents' job to raise you, to tell you what's right and wrong. Like I think it's disingenuous for people to say that a kid is looking up to a pro wakeboarder who doesn't wear a helmet or a vest, and like it's all of a sudden the pro wakeboarder's fault that the kid dies. Like that's BS to me. So, but I think to me the most dangerous thing you can do is ride wildly out of your skill level and ability. To me, that is the number one thing that is the most dangerous.
And especially if like you're not wearing the gear that's going to save your life while doing that.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, that's silly. Like all the things I did on the winch fell, even the back 3 down the spillway. It's at the bottom. It was 4 inches deep. Like it would have been a bummer if, you know, one of the people there had to like go down and get my unconscious body out of the water. But I don't know. You know, I thought about that. There wasn't huge like drowning potential or even smacking my head potential unless something, you know, outside of my control happened. Which it could have. Yeah.
But I mean, everybody be safe out there. Obviously, whatever you're doing, be safe and do it in the safest way possible to you that you can.
Yeah, for sure.
On that, so.
And yeah, I mean, absolutely. Just kind of, you know, whatever you're vibing with. If you're riding behind a boat or on a winch, it's totally your call to kind of do what you want to do. So
yeah, as long as everybody knows the consequences and, you know, everything, all that. So whatever. Yeah, I don't want to dive too much more into that. I think we kind of covered it there, but I think it's time we spin the LF'n wheel of questions.
Right on.
By Liquid Fort.
The LF'n wheel of questions.
Okay, let's go.
So yeah, go ahead and grab that down. Liquid Force likes to make wakeboarding fun, so let's spin the LF'n wheel of questions. Make this podcast a little bit more fun. So yeah, put it right there.
You gonna film it?
I am. So we're both gonna. Yeah.
We got some seltzer waters going.
I'm gonna turn the volume down on that burp.
That might not be the only one we hit. We got a whole
not.
case of what are those spindrifts?
No free ads. These are bubbly
no free
waters.
ads. Yeah. Some seltzer water, some bubblies.
So we're both gonna spin this.
You're like kind of rip it, right?
Yeah, rip it.
Yeah. The last time I was on here, by the way, Hunter did not have this stuff dialed in. We didn't have.
Well, we didn't have. Nobody was. There's nobody supporting the show. It was episode 2.
That's fair. All right.
This is all coming out of my own pocket. It still is. That was a good spin.
Decent. What do we got?
Oh, favorite board graphic.
Favorite board graphic. Okay, I didn't have an answer for this. I mean, Flight 69 for sure is up there because I remember Mark Rugula, who was kind of local pro dog, coming to Hexagon back in the day, and I think he like rode a Flight 69 one day, just like a vintage board. I don't think it was that one. It was a different colorway, but just back then, and also being like 14 years old and having, you know, the local pro, like the cool guys that I wanted to be friends with, and, you know, it's like, oh, 69? And it's an old cool vintage wakeboard. I'm like, that's sick.
Yeah.
That's, just overall super cool. New age, I really like that Virago.
Virago, yeah. That's what I'm saying, dude. It's sick.
On the wall there is super sick.
A couple years old now, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember also, I think the 2012 Reflex, I remember really liking. But again, a lot of this is just tied up with context, what was going on at the time. So it's like, that's what the dogs at the park were riding. So I was like, that's sick, right? But it was just really cool. It was kind of the end of like the hectic graphic kind of era, I felt like. So it was just, it said Reflex in this kind of like grunge, almost like metal looking like font. And then it just had a bunch of crazy stuff and cool colors going on, but it was mostly kind of like black and white.
Yeah, I'm not a big board graphic guy. Like there are ones that I think are cool, and then there's ones that like I don't really like. But I'm not like, if somebody's like, what did you think about the 2016 blah blah graphics? Like I don't. They don't stick out to me like that, you know? It's like, I like cool graphics, but.
I was thinking about it the other day because my friend took his board out of his car. I'm like, oh, are you going to get a new board this year? He's like, oh, no, this is a 25. He had a 25 Guara, Pedro's board, and it looks super sick.
Yeah.
But I'm like, wow, I'm just way out of the loop, which is crazy because back in the day, I was so dialed in,
dude.
like 100%. I knew what everybody was riding. I knew all the graphics. Even before that, being into hockey, like I knew all the NHL players, like what sticks they used, what gloves they used. I was just nerded out.
Yeah, big gearhead.
Yeah.
Gear guy.
All right, you gonna hit one of these?
Yeah, I'm gonna spin it. So, for the listeners, there is Milk Chug on here. It's made a triumphant return to the podcast. So.
We also have a Seltzer Chug.
We do.
So we'll definitely get a burp if that one hits.
Yeah. It's like the second time ever spinning that. Hot take.
Ooh, you've been saying your takes have been getting lukewarm.
Well, my take, I think my takes have been getting, soggy. Speaking of soggy, let's go hot take there. I think soggy rail hits are up there for me. I just like coming off the rail early. I just feel like kind of seeing that a little bit these days where it's, I talk to some people and it's like, if you can't slide the rail 5 more feet at least, you didn't make it to the end really if you're kind of coming off really. So that's like, I feel like that's not that hot.
You've been talking to the comp kids.
Yeah.
They be running that. And that is a valid
they
thing,
do.
because it's more, if you're not a comp guy, you just kind of know, but you can't explain it to anybody else. It almost makes it more difficult to like someone who wants to know what's good, but doesn't. It's like, it's like, you just know. when they're locked in. And like a comp kid just saying like, oh, it just means that if there was 10 more feet of the rail, they would have stayed on it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that just makes sense to everybody. Yeah, that just means they were locked in.
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not really.
That's not a hot take. You trying to hit this unit again?
Yeah, let me spin that thing.
Yeah, spin it again, dog.
I kind of want milk chugs. Better not go hot take. It's hot take again. I'm spinning again. It's hot. You spin it. It's hot take 3 times in a row for me. Dude, come on. What the fuck? Just like Betty Greenwood, dude. All right, favorite web edit. We'll both answer this one, but you go
Okay.
first since it's yours.
Yeah.
For the listeners, it landed on hot take like 6 times in a row there. So
Yeah. You know, I really what comes to mind immediately was back in the day, and again, this has a lot to do with like the era of my life that I watched the video in, and a lot, you know, the video was sick without a doubt, but I was just so hyped on wakeboarding. I was like 15. I would come home every day and reload Alliance, Wake World, Unleashed, Union, whatever the other ones were. And it was an edit with Ben LeClaire and Graham Burris from CWC. I think it was called Republication, but it had like a Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. I think that was the band, something around that song to it. And it was just classic C-Dub vibes at the time. Ben LeClaire, Graham Burris, just absolutely shredding. And I watched it so many times. Ooh, that. And then also another honorable mention is the very first Lords of Swagtown.
yeah, okay. I was.
Yep.
That's where my brain
I
was going
was
to.
so obsessed with that video, and it was a lot of boat, but it was just Canadians, like, you know, like Nick Dorsey and just like chirping Canadian.
In the bottom of their board, I think
Keep-
said "fuck wake surfing" on it or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Like they were just.
So yeah, just that overall vibe was so good. I remember it had a Kendrick Lamar song, and I really vibed with the song, and I put the audio of the edit on a CD that I would put in my 2000 Honda Civic and listen on the way to school every morning, because I liked hearing the lands of the wakeboards, and then also just their Canadian banter.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know. I mean, I like Tubular by Shredtown. I've come back to that one quite a few times. The coalitions, I'm not good with which are which. I mean, I know like gun to my head, I could probably name the song to most of them, but like a lot of those I've really loved.
I'd say to me,
especially the
like
earlier
one of the
ones.
most influential ones was it just called Buttery Biscuits?
That's Buttery
Yeah,
Biscuits
yeah,
is one.
without
I
a
think that's
doubt.
probably the most influential one on me for sure.
Yeah, it was just so
'Cause
good.
it was so early,
it was
yeah.
just big vibes. And actually, this is something I was thinking about, man, in that era and that time of like, I don't know exactly when the year was, but the first couple years Valdosta was open, and even the years that like Wes Mark Jacobson was at Jibtopia, like nowadays it's just standard. Everyone who's into boarding puts out multiple videos on Instagram and also, web edits. But at the time, Wes and that crew were putting out a video, like a Instagram video every 1 to 2 weeks, and then a bigger video every 1 to 2 months. And at the time, it felt like they were everywhere, and they were the whole sport if you were into cable wakeboarding, because compared to what everybody else was doing, everybody else was posting 1 or 2 Instagram clips a year. I mean, I'm sure there were some people doing more than that, but they were just consistently for 2 years just putting out consistent content that was like,
Good.
I vibed with a lot was it. So
And
they were
lump
top
on
of
top
mind.
that like Valdosta was new. It didn't look like any of the other parks. Like they rode with different style. Like it was that time was that was a crazy time. We'll also do the LF'n wild card, which is a question from the crew at Liquid Force.
Yeah.
And they're wondering both of our best Liquid Force memories. So anything to do with Liquid Force, I guess.
I think I got 2 that would be pretty good for this one. So the first one is my first time getting up on a wakeboard. My brother, who's quite a bit older than me, Bill, shout out Bill, he bought a wakeboard when he was living with my parents and then just left it there. So it was probably like 10 years old by the time I rode it, in probably 2008. It was probably like an 02. It was just all blue, totally flat base, super narrow. It was that era of boards. It was a twin tip, but you had to, use soap to get in the bindings and thumb screws and these super fatty fins. But that was just the first board I ever got up wakeboarding, and I actually got up like a slalom ski because just none of us knew. My parents just didn't know. They had no idea. I was talking to my friend's dad, who's, kind of this redneck dude, super cool and nice, but he'd mess with you sometimes. His name was Brian. He's like, yeah, you get up like with the board sideways. I'm like, you're messing with me, Brian. No, that's not. He's like, yeah, that's how you do it. Try it. It'll be easier. I'm like, how would that even work? But it worked. And yeah, but that was a super good memory for me. That board was sick. yeah, and that was just a good era of my life, man. It was just me, my mom, and my dad on the boat. Just classic, wholesome, middle America fun. Just learning how to wakeboard behind the boat with my parents. Like, that was sick. I actually might have not gotten up the very first time because I tried to get up like a slalom ski and it just wasn't working. I can't totally remember. And then another one would be, what was the free event they used to do? They might Free for all.
Yeah.
They did a free for all at Hexagon, which was my local park when I was mid to young teenager. And it was just a really solid crew. I have a selfie I'll put up. I got like a Justin Bieber haircut. It's like me, Daniel Grant, Reed Hansen, Aaron Reed. That was the wake skater's name, right? Yeah. Raph, Bob Sovin. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
They used to bring the hitters
dude,
around.
They brought the hitters. It was super cool. I even think Felix and Nico were there too. They just weren't in this particular photo. But I got a selfie with them. Honestly, that day was it was cool. Like, my parents came out and, I took a couple laps on the cable. I think I started working at the cable relatively quickly after that, or maybe the next season. But it was just a cool day. And that era of my life, like that season, and then the debut came out the next season. And I'm just like hanging out with pros and being a young person. It was like, oh, there's this scene, there's this culture, there's these people who travel and do this. And it really helped curate the environment for eventually the switch to go off to like, I could base my whole life around this if I wanted. Like, maybe it's not the best idea, but it's a possibility. There's other people who have done it before me. So if it's something I really love, and yeah, that was a huge thing. I think it's super cool that they used to do that, and that personally had a really big impact on me and just helping me stay hyped. And like, I watched Wake Brothers, so it was like, oh my god, I met Bob Sovin.
Wake Brothers time.
Yeah, it was a year or two after, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, also speaking of which, they still do nowadays. They kind of, I wouldn't say rebranded, but they do like Ride with the Pros, where they'll do similar things. So it's still cool that they're still out there doing that. I mean, but back then, I feel like Bob Sovin's name was like just so big, like bigger than wakeboarding, obviously, because he was on MTV and all that shit. And like, I never met him, but he's a cool, funny guy. Mine would be one is going to LAO and just meeting a bunch of the Liquid Force crew members. But the bigger one is having a meeting with Don Wallace, who's like, one of the big guys at Liquid Force and super cool guy. And just about him like supporting the podcast. And they were the first ones to not take me seriously, but like entertain a conversation about like, it was still early. Like, it wasn't super structured. I probably wasn't very good at it at that point. Still might not be, I don't know. But and we just had a meeting, and he was just genuinely curious and interested in supporting, and we figured something out from there, and it like instilled a belief that I can do this as like a thing. I'm not gonna make buku dollars here doing it, but like I can do it, and he reached out his neck and believed in me, and that was just cool. Like, it was awesome. Like, it's super cool, and like I hadn't really ridden Liquid Force since I was a kid at that point, so it was just like bigger than that to him, I guess, and yeah, it was just awesome. The crew at Liquid Force is sick, so thanks to Liquid Force for that.
Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, I have just being a fan of wakeboarding, I was in love with Humanoid for a while, and they did so much for the culture, and same deal with Slingshot. I was, working in a Liquid Force park and rode a Slingshot, and the owner was not too hyped on that. So just all of these brands have given me just so much stoke for the sport of wakeboarding, but, Liquid Force for sure, just like with the free for all, and like I was just so into Kevin Henshaw back in the day. I was like so hyped on the deluxe because I just didn't know what was good, and it was marketed as like you can ride it on the boat or the cable, which it was just a cable board with fin holes. But still, that is something you can ride. I mean, I was doing cab 180s wake to wake, like you can do that with a cable board and fins. And I was just so hyped on that board, and then the debut came out, and the next year's graphic, and I was so hyped. And it's funny because they're finally getting filtered out, but Morgan Batchelor, the owner of Elevated, he's been on Liquid Force forever. Now he kind of rides it all. But, for the longest time, he was just riding Liquid Force stuff. So he has all these old park boards when he just used to be a rider. And he's a bigger dude, so they were maxed out in size back then. So they're like 138s, 142s, and they were comprising a lot of the rental fleet at Elevated. So you see all these like gems of boards, like the very first FLX that Liquid Force ever made, the first deluxe that they ever made, and there's just like, beginners who can't grab traction, just like board sliding straight into the kicker on them. And, but just, it's cool to just like see him continue to live. And I think, 4 seasons later of being a rental board, like they're toasted. Yeah. But it's like also Morgan rode him for a year, and he's a big dude.
Yeah, he was ripping those things, dude.
So it's been cool to see those kick around. And also kind of hitting on the topic, just to give the listeners a little bit of context, me and Hunter are super good friends. We've lived together multiple times in our life. We filmed the first ZMT movie together, and we have that was me. I touched the mic.
No, you're good.
Okay. We have chats like on a weekly basis at least that last like a few hours. So this being kind of the first like returning guest episode, I really want to get like a little bit more of a back and forth going with Hunter and just talk about the show a little bit. I think your what episode is this going to be, like 75
79?
Okay,
79,
cool.
yeah.
So I mean, you're almost 80 episodes in. You're 2 years from your first episode, at least, something like that.
Yeah, got to be at least.
Yeah. So I mean, you've been doing this for a while, and I feel like people are just curious. And I've obviously known you and been talking to you for with you about doing a podcast and having you do a podcast for like a year before it even started.
Yeah.
So I guess I would just like to like zoom in and double click on what it was like getting started. And
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember, you've been using these cameras and like these lights. We just got a little new setup. Shout out. Who brought you the lights?
Chase Hevner. Shout out Chase Hevner.
Yeah, we finally got him dialed in, Chase.
Super thankful for that.
Yep. But, you've been using this stuff for a while, but it was like a decent investment, right? Probably like $2,000 for everything at least.
Yeah, I mean, each camera was around $500, and then you got to get the charger and the shittiest tripods you could ever imagine for these things.
Guys, these light stands that he had before he got these ones were like on the verge of just bending over. They're like bowing, like they're about to shoot an arrow.
Yep. Yeah, actually, funny story about those is I had Cole Vanhoff in here a while ago, and he's, works with Alliance and does a lot of videography. He knows what he's doing basically. And he comes in, and I'm not nervous. I don't think. I'm just kind of like fumbling around, and I knock one of the lights over. It starts tipping over like in slow motion, and I just see it heading for a tripod, and then it just knocks the tripod over in the camera. They both hit the ground. They're fine. And I just kind of look up at Cole, and I don't think he says anything. He's like, "Oh man, you got to get some weights for those." And I'm just imagining him like, "Wow, heck of a setup you got here, bud. Just you can't even walk through here without knocking your own shit over." So yeah, it's kind of evolving slowly, but yeah, it was at least $1,500 for the cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like working at the time and saving up, and then I would buy stuff, and then I would save up and buy stuff.
So I want to dig like even more into that. I have recently kind of gone off on my own, doing my own thing, my own, trying to just make my own money, not working for somebody else, and just freelancing, doing videography, and obviously you are able to support yourself through the income you make on this podcast, thanks to a few brands and also Patreon, which is super sick. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you to everybody on the Patreon.
Yeah, but like, I want to hear a little bit about what you were doing before you started the podcast and what the transition looked like to get here. And just, I guess, to paint a little context for the listener, he'd been talking about this for probably a year, right? Yeah. Talking a lot with me, a lot with Dan Jarrett, right? And for maybe 2 months before he officially started it, like something kind of changed in him. And he was like, because we bring this up, and usually I just call him out for like not getting on it and doing. He's like, I'll eventually move to Orlando, da 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 da. And then he was just like, it's coming, and just like wouldn't need to defend himself or like talk about hypothetical plans. He's like, it's coming,
now,
yeah. And I don't think you really talked to me too much about it then. No. It was more of a surprise. It was probably like you and Dan, and you had who made the logos for you?
Christian Coltman, shout out, dude, he killed it.
Yeah. So you had all this stuff going behind the scenes. You were dropping all this money, but at the time, other than obviously there's people like myself and Daniel Jarrett who got it and wanted to support you, but you're just working for the most part like a traditional 9-to-5 job with coworkers who, value their 401k and going out on the weekends. And talk to me a little bit about like that transition and what kind of mindset shift or what mindset you were in to want to just start your own thing and drop money and a bunch of discretionary effort.
Yeah, definitely. So I was working at a boat dealership, Action Water Sports, and I was making, I think, $25 an hour. No, not even $25 an hour. I was making like $45,000 a year, something like that. So like a decent amount of money, but definitely nothing crazy. And you're not gonna do anything crazy with your life with that amount of money. Not that money is what it's about, but I was totally fine with it. I was liked where I worked. I liked the people I worked with, but it wasn't like scratching the itch of, I love wakeboarding. I'm obsessed with it. Obviously, it's something I do. It's what I do. It's what I think about all the time. I love riding. I love every aspect about it. And so I was just kind of slowly, kind of like the frog in hot water, where it's like just you're not really realizing what's going on. And it was like a year passed, 2 year passed, 3 years passed of doing a couple jobs where I liked doing them, but it wasn't like fulfilling to the point where I wanted it to be. So then I saw what I thought was a gap in kind of wakeboarding, and I wanted to attack it. And yeah, slowly started saving. I mean, I was always saving. I didn't know what for, and then I was saving more, and I kind of figured out, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Took so long to figure out the name. The name actually came pretty quick, and then I talked myself out of it. I was like, that's a terrible name. And then I talked myself back into it, and I was like, you just got to pick a fucking name.
By the time you talked to me about it, you're hyped. You're like, I got a great name.
Yeah,
and you dropped me with
it. It's a full circle.
Yeah, and like, I wasn't like, yeah, that's the perfect name. But I was like, yeah, that is a decent name. And like, I back his confidence that he has right now. And now it's like, yeah, it is a sick name. And I love just people ask me like, oh, yeah, like, what are you going to Orlando for? I'm like, oh, I'm going to be on Grab Matters. Going to do an episode with Hunter. And they're like, oh, sick. And it's just like totally normal. And it's just part of a wakeboarder or water sport enthusiast vernacular at this point. So that was super helpful. Kind of thanks for diving in there. How was it like? Was it difficult? Was it scary? I mean, a lot of people want to do stuff like this. Like, it's scary. Like, you're talking about, you know.
Yeah, the whole, like, being on camera thing was the hardest part at the beginning. And I guess talking to a mic, too, where it's like, I don't set up 3 cameras with a bunch of lights facing at me and then talking to a mic and then publish it for the world to hear. That part really didn't stress me out, the publishing for the world to hear. I didn't really care about that much. But, like, sitting and not being prepared, or, like, what if the camera's not right, or what if I look fat or not fat, or like what if I don't look good on camera, or like whatever. Not that it really matters, but you just have all these things going through your head because you've never done anything. Like, I've never done anything like this before, and I just was just like, well, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna have to figure it out. You know, like, you don't know camera stuff, you don't know audio equipment, you don't know any of this stuff, so like you're just gonna have to figure it out. And yeah, slowly but surely just figured it all out, and yeah, that was kind of the progression. Yeah, it was definitely scary though, for sure, at first.
Yeah. And I think maybe talk a little bit about, you know, obviously you worked your job for a while. You're, you know, financially responsible. You don't blow a bunch of money on stuff, but, you know, you saved up some money and you moved down to Florida, and it took you a while to, you know, get the Patreon where it was actually supporting you. Like, talk a little bit about like how long it took to, you know, because it's cool now, and I'm sure there's certain people out there who like love what you got going on and are so happy for you that you're able to support yourself doing a podcast. And I'm sure there are other people, because I know 19-year-old Dylan would have been like, bro, he's just like talking to people, like, you know, whatever, like making money, getting flown out to LAO, like doing stuff with Red Bull, like, you know, screw this guy. He just sits at a table and talks to people, hits the little kicker at O-Dub. Like,
we'll talk about the little kicker later.
Yeah, it's like, what's he got going on?
Yeah,
talk about that, like the gap between like, I'm doing this, I'm all in, like I'm gonna do it till I run out of money or I hit whatever X amount on the rainy day fund. Like, that had to be terrifying.
Yeah, there was a good sized rainy day fund, which I'd been saving up for a while, and moving down here, I had a fortunate rent situation where it wasn't super expensive. And I was kind of dwindling that money slowly, but as podcasts were coming out, I believed in it. Like, I thought that I could do something with it. And the Patreon, I think I was talking to, I think it was John Dreiling or maybe somebody else, and they're like, dude, you got to give like a way for the people to directly support you. And I was like, man, I just don't want to do that. Like, that doesn't feel right to me. It feels weird that like I'm asking for somebody's money, you know? Like, I just want to, it just felt weird. It feels weird. And hindsight 2020, that's a stupid thing. That's a stupid way to feel. You know, like, that's
a big time limiting belief.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if I see somebody doing something cool that I like and I want to support them, like, make it easy for me to help you. Like, that's what I want to do. And so I did that, and that the Patreon grew, you know, slowly, but it continues to grow, and it's definitely the nice, like, it's not a ton of money. None of these are a ton of money. Like, I'm not making buku dollars out here, but I am supporting myself, which is awesome. But that's like a huge thing that helps you even further believe in it. It's like, okay, we got some money coming in. And like, when I had some money coming in, I was like, okay, well, if I have some coming in, why can't I just like continue to try and find unique ways to get more? And that was, you know, working with different brands, and shout out to all the brands that have supported and will continue to support, because that's literally what is going to keep us going, and all the people as well. So it's huge. Yeah, I guess I don't know where else we were going with that. I mean, the Red Bull thing and like going to LAO is like awesome, and I'm super thankful for that. And I mean, the Red Bull thing, I guess like there's some transparency there. Like, you were involved to get us there.
I guess we can just get into that. We'll find our way back to talking about the pod.
So
stuff,
Red Bull Wake the City in Milwaukee this August, right?
Something like that. Kind of mid to late summer.
Yeah, we did some event coverage, which was a blast, a ton of work. Like, we were pretty much working the entire time we were there, but it was fun. Like,
I'll kind of set it up a little bit too. So Hunter had mentioned, so basically Red Bull Wake the City, if you don't know and you're watching this podcast, that's crazy.
It's crazy, yeah.
But basically in downtown Milwaukee, they had this little bay. It was a super cool event. I guess they used to do like double up contests there back in the day. But yeah, John Dreiling has been doing like event management, and, you know, stepping into that role with Red Bull on the wakeboard side of things. So he was running it. We're both really good friends with John. John knows us. He understands where our head's at and trusts us. And you had mentioned to me, like, I'm going to cruise over to Wake the City. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I was kind of thinking, like, dude, maybe I come with him and we try to run up some content.
And this was, what, 2 weeks before the event, maybe?
This was a little while ago, because actually you said, you're like, I just don't think it's going to be, like, easy to get good content at this event. And you almost kind of, like, shut it down before I even, like, talked about it. And I was like, wah, 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 and just kind of let it chill. and then, yeah, maybe 2 weeks before the event, you were for sure going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, what if I just came up and we just crushed some event coverage? Yeah. Because we were all hyped up. I recently found this podcast where they were breaking down, like, Wimbledon had recently happened.
What it was, yeah.
Yep. And there was this sales and marketing podcast that was breaking down how Wimbledon, it's a 2-week tennis tournament. They know what Wimbledon is.
Biggest one.
And I forget the number. I think it was like 2,000 pieces of content in 14 days between YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Like 2,000 pieces of content. And then this show broke down all the different pillars. Like they were doing behind the scenes, they were doing game highlights, this and that. And I'm like, they had a team of, I don't know, 30 plus. But I was people, like, dude, we could do something similar like this in wakeboarding. Like this would be awesome. And I think this event would be great. We know John. Like, let's hit up John and see what he thinks. So you were down and we contacted John, and John's like, yeah, I got you. Like, I might be able to get you guys a hotel room. I'll for sure get you guys passes. So all the stuff that you saw, again, just full of transparency, through Grab Matters at Red Bull Wake the City, like I paid for my own plane ticket. Hunter paid for his own gas to get there. Gibby also ended up coming and doing all the photographs. Like Gibby paid for himself to come. We slept in Lucas Lowry's hotel room. Shout out Lucas. Thank you. I think he like stayed with Andy one night.
Yeah,
so
they moved things around.
Yeah. So like shout out, but it was like, I was sleeping on the floor cause I lost rock, paper, scissors to Gibby. So that's what was going down behind the scenes at that event. And it was a blast and we loved it and kind of worked ourselves silly, but we had a plan, and I think we executed on it really well.
Yeah, we did. It was a ton of fun, and it was definitely a trial run of like what I want, and I'm sure you like everybody wants that to look like going forward. It was every time you do something for the first time, it's not going to be exactly what you want, but it turned out pretty close to what I would have hoped for the first run would have gone of that. And I mean, I think the team we had worked great together, and it was a ton of fun. And I think we all got sick afterwards. I definitely got sick. I got sick, COVID,
yeah. And me and Hunter were talking about this. I was almost like on like a come down from that weekend because the vibes were so good. Just the event itself was amazing. If you were a part of it, even as a spectator, I think you understand that. And then also from us, we were doing this new thing and we were just positive reinforcement, like crazy. We were just doing decent numbers on Instagram. We were, posting a bunch, and it was getting a bunch of traction relative to what we had going on. Yep. And then also just people like riders, parents, people who are helping put on the event were also coming up to us and saying, you guys are doing a great job. This is sick. This is all I see coming out from the event. Like, you guys are killing it. And it was just like, this is amazing. I'm doing what I love. I'm working 10+ hour days. Cause I mean, we'd shoot and edit stuff all day. Yeah, let's get into the weeds about what was actually going down. Yeah. So Hunter's got this super sick van.
Yeah, my parents, they let me borrow it and stick it on the side, which is fucking sick. But yeah.
Yeah, so he's got the Grab Matters van. Like day one, we pull it up to basically right in front of the lake, and we're shooting videos, right? And then I'm going back to the van. I'm editing videos. I'm sending Gibby out with, he's grabbing photos and then taking
of people Gibby doesn't really know. Like, he kind of knows wakeboarding, but doesn't know it that well.
We're like, can you get staged portraits of every single rider? And he's like, yeah. And two, just some great organic moments come out of that. Like, we get there, it's super early. You guys pick me up from the airport. We go to the venue and we're like, oh, we're hungry. So we rocked like Chipotle or Qdoba or something. Qdoba, yeah, and we're sitting down and I'm editing the first video real quick in Qdoba, and I'm like, oh, dude, some man on the street stuff would be really funny. And Hunter's like, oh, I got that. Like, if you know Hunter, that's just his personality. He thrives in that. So Hunter and Gibby just walk out with a microphone. I'm editing a video. They come back and I'm like, how'd it go? Like, I have no idea. I'm like, maybe they just fully struck out. They're like, oh, it's good.
It was so funny.
If you haven't seen the video, like, maybe throw a couple of them in. I'm sure most people have.
I'm curious on who you think is going to win this weekend's Red Bull Wake the City.
I don't know anything about that.
Facts. No question? All right, fair enough. Hey there, I'm curious who you think is going to win Red Bull Wake the City this weekend. He doesn't know. I'm curious who you think is going to win Red Bull Wake the City this weekend. I got a quick question. Who do you think is going to win Red Bull Wake the City this weekend?
I don't know. I'm not from Milwaukee.
Okay. Heard they're checking for Coast Guard approved life jackets. I'm curious who you think is going to win Red Bull Wake the City this weekend.
Don't know what it is. Sorry.
Wakeboard contest downtown Saturday.
But it was just a really cool organic moment that came from just like right place, right time. And it was awesome having me, you, and Gibby together. Like right away when that weekend started, I like choked on a chip or something. And like I was just laughing at Gibby. And Gibby is a classic. Like if something's kind of funny, you're just going to like reciprocate your laughter and just send you. And I was just laughing so hard, like right when the weekend started. And yeah, and then it just kind of kept going from there. The rest of the content we did was way more planned out. We had like more stuff planned and ready to go. But yeah, it was essentially like shoot 2 to 3 videos, edit them by noon, get them up, you know, have them scheduled for like 1, 2, 3 p.m. and then repeat and try to get 9 to 12 pieces of content. I think I counted. I think we did 34 pieces of content in 3 days.
Yeah, and like our goal, I guess, it was a rough goal, but I think at least mine was to like educate people on the event. So we wanted to make sure to keep like tally of, you know, placing, finals, like get the finals runs, all that stuff. Definitely entertain. We wanted to entertain people in a funny way with interviews and all that shit. And Inspire is one of those other ones that I don't think we did a great job of inspiring maybe, but maybe that's not the goal of those things anyways. But yeah, I think we kind of did.
Yeah, I think to elaborate on that, right, like talking about, for me, what, you know, I talked about this in the last podcast and I mentioned it a little bit, right, that first free-for-all, going to the debut premiere, those things were really cool, and obviously that's more like traditional, right? Like a demo, movie premiere, that's traditional in board sports, how you promote and market. But it's the bigger picture of there's this culture out there of people doing things, and they're all friends, and they just enjoy spending time together, and they very clearly love what they do, and just communicating that. To me, it was like one-on-one, and I was getting to spend time with those people. Nowadays, with how easy it is to connect with other people and post to social media, that's just clearly the way to go. That's just your highest leveraged opportunity. You can reach people all over the world that way. So while we didn't directly like inspire anybody to strap on a wakeboard for the first time, I do think, you know, we gave the kid who was getting like really into cable for the first year, like being like just seeing these faces, hearing Jacob Sunday do an interview, Luca Kid say some funny stuff. That's a funny dude.
Luca Kid's a funny dude.
Yeah, just hear him say some funny stuff and just, you know, be like, wow, this is really cool. And, you know, it's not like either of us have significantly changed the course of wakeboarding forever, but we've ran some events. We've made some movies together. You've made a huge impact with this podcast. Yeah. We've both worked at multiple cable parks. You worked at a cable park that may not have happened had it not been for your, you know, willingness to step into that role and, you know, get it done that first year. So it's like, we have had an impact, right? And it's because other people showed us that there was stoke and a community and this cool thing going on. So I think just what we did there and what we will continue to do with event coverage to come is hopefully just providing that same opportunity to the next generation, right? Yeah. And then they're going to do a couple of their own events and they're going to film a movie on tape and be like, you know, just like we did, all angsty, like, why does everybody film with these HD cameras and blah, blah, blah. But that's cool, you know, and they'll do a homie premiere and 20 people will come out and their parents will be there and it'll be kind of cringy and it'll be sick and they'll be contributing to the culture, you know, 100%. Just as we did with tape.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, you know, definitely hoping to do more and planning to do more of that event style coverage. It seems like people like it. We like doing it. So we're going to figure out a way to, you know, keep making that happen at the events that we can do it at. Cause I think it's just it's a blast and
and
people need to see it.
Yeah. And just shifting the mindset too. I think for me and you both a long time, it was like, man, I love this culture in sports so much. How do I potentially support myself and make money? And you're young and it's like, oh, like learn back tens. Duh. Like how else would I do it? Right. And we both kind of hit the plateau along with realizing just willingness to push ourselves physically on the wakeboard, like right around, you know, like front nine. And it's kind of
it ain't going further than front nine for me.
Yeah, but just realizing, you know, you with this podcast, but your ability and willingness to be adaptable to providing value to these brands and building the sport and building the exposure just in a way that is like sick and helps curate the core of the culture and also helps it resonate outwards and helps generate revenue for these brands, right? Yeah. So being able to come into an event like that with that context and me starting my own business, that's a lot of what I do. I do video content. I help organic and paid social media. I work with a few local businesses as well as do event coverage. So that's kind of my wheelhouse anyway. So I think diving back into wakeboarding, something we're both so passionate about, with a lens of how do we get more eyeballs on this and provide value to brands so it makes sense. And it's just a whole different way of approaching it, as opposed to like, well, let me just try to be the best wakeboarder or have a unique style so I can just take these brands' money.
Yeah.
Kinda. And it's like, how do I get more money coming into this whole thing, this whole funnel, the brands that we support and we believe in, which pretty much any brand that's going to get discussed on this podcast, or if you see a piece of their merch, is like one of those people, right? They help support the core of the culture. So I think coming at it with that lens, it helps grow the sport, and it helps provide, value to potential, brands or people who want to work with us. So I think hopefully you'll see more of that coming up this summer and, more years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we dive into a Patreon question that's kind of event-based, but I think we didn't hit the milk chug, and it seems disingenuous to have this pint of milk sitting down here and it not get chugged. So I think we rock, paper, scissors.
Man, all right. I have not chugged milk.
Wait, if you got a better idea, we can do something else. But
no, I like it.
All right. Well, I'll grab this up and we're going on shoot, obviously, and we're just gonna do best of one. So
rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Yep.
Okay, that's how I did it. I grew up in Michigan too.
Yeah, that's how you gotta do it. All right.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. That is not good. Hunter went rock. I went scissors.
Always go rock. Come on. You always go rock.
I need to take a knee, or I just hit this in the chair?
No, I think you hit in the chair. Yeah, you can hit in the chair.
All right. So for the listeners, we got Publix whole grade A milk, 1 pint, vitamin D added, 300 calories. Wow, that's wild.
How much protein though? There's some teen in there.
Yeah, we got some teen with the 15 grams of protein. So that's not bad. We hit the cable today, so a little gains.
Yeah.
All right. Good. All
right. So yeah, if you're listening, maybe tune in, because I hope this stays down, doesn't come right back up.
That would be. We'd have to take a break.
Great content. He said he hasn't chugged anything in a long time. I mean, Buddy's been sober 3 years now, and you're not really chugging anything else. I guess water. You can chug water. All right, it's going down, and there it is. Good time.
Oh, I handled that way better than I thought I would.
How was it? You liked it?
It was really tasty.
Good milk. It's good milk. That's a milk burp right there.
That was really good. Yeah, that kind of brought me back to, you're right, like, why am I going to chug anything if I'm not drinking?
Yeah, that's like
water.
If you're really thirsty.
I do that on a fair basis, because I do be getting thirsty and just So, wow, I'm really impressed with myself.
Yeah, but you're still pat on the back there. All right. Okay, so speaking of events, got a Patreon question from John Dreiling. So I didn't say it earlier, but thank you to everybody on the Patreon. Your guys' support is what keeps this podcast going.
Real quick, before we get into John's, because I know we were just talking about, you being able to support yourself with this podcast. How much, do you think you'd have to get another job if you had 0 Patreon?
Yes, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay, so
or I'd have to get other sponsors and really grind that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, all the sponsors, shout out to supporting such a cool thing, but every Patreon member who gives $10 a month, you allow Hunter to do this. You allow these episodes to happen. So if you're a regular listener, I mean, you should take pride and be stoked in that. It's a big part of the reason that
you get a
this
sticker
thing's
pack
happening.
Too. Yeah. Sticker pack, there you go.
And you get a sticker pack. Yeah.
Sick.
All right.
So speaking of events, from Johnny D himself, he's wondering if we can walk him through Ripfest. What was it? How did it work? What was the format? What was the goal behind this event? And he's got a follow up for it. But I think we kind of run through it's Rockford Ripfest at West Rock Wake Park, circa 2018, 2017.
That sounds about right.
Something around there. Yeah. Definitely pre-COVID.
17, 18, something like that.
Yeah, I don't even know where'd the idea come from. I mean, it was the thing me and you did, but.
So I guess to set the scene a little bit, it was around that time. I was probably 20 at the time. We were both living in a house in Rockford. I had rode at West Rock once or twice, loved the vibes, loved the park. I had heard that you were moving up there, and I was like, what's up? You're like, is there a place to live? Can I get a job? What's the deal? So we're both working at West Rock, living in a house together, also making pizzas at 6 a.m. for, I don't know, it was $9 an hour.
Before 5 a.m., dude. I remember this vividly. But yeah, anyways, we were making frozen pizzas that they sold at stores.
Yeah, it was a whole situation. But that was the general vibe of what's going on. So me and Hunter are, every night we're just putting on wakeboard movies, hanging out in our living room with the dog and just crushing beers, or not crushing beers, but drinking 3 or 4 beers and making some shitty frozen pizza, probably not as nice as the ones we were making in the morning.
Oh, those are nice ones.
Yep. So we're talking, Dang, and this will be good for a progression of a hater, but whatever. We can just kind of.
That's a segment we'll get into later. So.
Yeah. But we're kind of talking a lot of smack just at this stage in our like development of just being humans and knowing how to interact with things in the world. So it's like, oh, this event sucks. Snowboarding's so cool because of X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Like
classic.
Yep, I had worked at Boreal and we did an event with Air Blaster called Sculf. And then also at Boreal that year, we did 2 different events with Snowboy Productions, which if you don't know snowboarding, Air Blaster is a really cool brand. They do super cool stuff. Sculf's a really cool event that they've been doing for a while. It's basically just an event. Everybody gets together. It's kind of like golf themed. It's super cool. And then Air Blaster is one of the coolest event production Snowboy is one of the coolest event production companies just in the world. And it just so happens to be in snowboarding. They make amazing things and usually have great partners. But we worked on 2 really cool events. So my head was spinning with all these snowboard ideas and like, how do we do something a little bit different? And basically we were trying to take the principle of Sculf and apply that to wakeboarding somehow. And Dan was kind of like, yeah, like I'd love to do an event, have it be grassroots. He really like took kind of he just trusted us.
Yeah, back
to
to
do
you.
this
Just like,
thing.
figure it out.
Like, you guys need a budget? Like, what's good? I mean, I think the budget was like a $60 piece of plywood that we bought and some
spray painted
it black. Yeah. Shout out Dan, though. I mean, it was really cool. And he gave us the cable for the day in September. It was really cold. But still, people showed out. It was cool. And I think the basic principle of the very first one we did was it was like you had to do a new trick you'd never done before in each feature, or it was something like that. There was a feature attached to... I don't even remember.
I thought that the second one was the one where you got points for each one, right? And there was different sections of tricks, like beginner, intermediate, and advanced tricks, and there were points associated with each of them, and you had your...
That was the teams one. The first one we did was not teams.
Yeah.
It was the scoreboard, and maybe you picked a trick, and it had to be a trick you hadn't done before.
This is going to be tough for the listeners here. Yeah, I guess...
Anyway, it was a unique event that just like it was completely different than any traditional event, and it wasn't super heavily competition-based, but there was a winner, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I think so. I don't know what they got.
Yeah.
Probably nothing.
Day pass or something. But it was fun.
It was a really cool event. And basically it just got me and Hunter's brain like going and running in the right direction about just like how to do an event. So the next year...
The second one was a lot better than the first one.
We decided to do team-based format. And we had teams come in, and Space Mob Crew was up there. So like Quinn was captain of a team. I think Wes was captain of a team maybe. And then me and you had a team. Something like that. Yeah. And then there's a girls team, like Anna Nickstad was out there. Yeah. And it was actually really cool. Like the captains really got into it. And that principle was there was 3 stations, 4 stations. This was actually hilarious.
It was fun, dude.
There was 4 stations. There was the 3 stations, 4 stations. Whatever. There was the 2.0. Yeah. Because there was 2 different 2.0s.
Yes.
So each 2.0 was a station. The full cable was a station. And then there was a trivia station.
Yes.
So we had a questionnaire of core board sports style stuff. And me and Hunter weren't allowed to help our team with it.
Yeah.
That's how it kept it fair. And that was essentially, there were different, we had it set up somehow, but basically when you were at each station, either the 2.0s or the full cable, you got points for your team by doing a trick you'd never done before. And that was really cool because then the captains got to interact with everybody on their team and help coach them through, like you got Quinn Silvernail teaching the local guy at, West Rock how to do, board slide 270 out, and he's just like loving the interaction, and Quinn and all those guys were just super helpful, and they killed it just participating in the event.
Well, and there were random bonus add-ons too, where it's like 100 snake bites. So like you had to go out and do 100 snake bites, and then you come back and you check that off the list. You get
there was one where like get pitted, like do a turn around the motor tower where your head dips, and like Wes got smoked trying it
because you had to get fully pitted. Like,
your helmet had to go in the water.
The rules were definitely strict. They were fun, but you had to get the points or to check it off.
Yeah, and it was self-judged, right?
Yeah.
So your teams were self-governing, and It was actually really funny. There was like it was kind of close, and we ended up like letting a call slide. And I remember Quinn being like, "Oh, we should have won." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like he's hyped up. Yeah. Like he just put in some work to this event. Like, and we ended up doing like a tiebreaker, which was longest grab or something.
Yeah, longest grab.
Yeah, and me and Hunter both timed it going off the kicker. Derek forgot to grab.
Derek punted. Unreal. Was this the one where you had to, before the event even started, each team had to finish a pizza before
Yes.
they could go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So you
we
had to
bought
finish a hot and ready pizza. Each team had a hot and ready pizza. And this was a surprise. We didn't tell anybody that they had to do this. And we rolled the pizzas out and we're like, all right, 3, 2, 1, go. Before you guys start riding, you have to finish this pizza.
Dude, we were on it. We were so creative back then.
That was funny, dude. People yeah.
I'm in a whole different headspace now. I feel like you are too. We kind of curate our thoughts a little bit more, but there's something beautiful to be said about just hatching an idea with a buddy when you don't have anything else to think about. You're a couple beers in and you're just obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we came up with some fun, cool ideas, and those were the 2 Ripfests, and some really cool people came out. Quite a few people came from Action. Adam Sinclair came out.
The quarry was
both
close.
of them.
Another cable people came from.
Yeah, it was a really cool like unifying event for the Midwest, and honestly, I really feel like it helped set the stage for what is now Rail Garden Rampage.
Yeah,
which
it's definitely
is
a good precursor to that.
Yeah,
for
which
sure.
is the Midwest event that actually it was when we were on the first podcast. It was right after the second one happened.
Yeah, it was.
So that's an event that happens in the Midwest that really brings the core cable community together that maybe aren't traveling to Europe and all these other big contests, but the kind of fringe guys.
I would say it's like a step below all the major big contests.
Yeah, so there's some prize money and, the guys who just like love wakeboarding, guys and gals, travel and all hang out and it's a super good time. Lots of just, partying and just bonding and good times. And I think those Ripfests really help set the stage for that, like Fletcher came to those events and Fletcher and some of the other people at Action, you'd probably know more than me, but helped kind of put the very first Rail Garden Rampage together and get it rocking.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I think the follow-up from John here is like, why do you think events like this are so important to the sport? And what did this event do for the community? You answered the second one with the community.
Yeah,
I think why are these important? For the
dude,
sport?
totally. I think it's something I touched on a little bit earlier in the episode, just right, like me buying into the culture of wakeboarding. And this is something that like the Stuckies have always done. And they were actually at one of the Ripfests, I think. I can't remember.
I don't think they were.
Well, they were at something that we did at
maybe. I don't know.
They were, dude. I don't know. Anyway, the Stuckies and just different people in the culture have, put a lot of energy into making events like this in the past. And it builds the culture. It creates a community. Like, you don't feel like you're a football player unless you're on the school team. Like, you don't feel like you're a hockey player unless you're like playing in the Parks and Rec League. If you just like go to the hockey rink every so often with a stick and puck and shoot around, it's kind of this like weird middle ground thing. And yeah, there's points chase, but that wasn't super prominent in the Midwest. It didn't
resonate with me really. It's not like what I'm particularly interested in. There's nothing wrong with that either. Like the points chase is awesome, all these other contests awesome, but like not just because somebody wakeboards doesn't mean they're gonna like those things. So kind of almost catering that. Not weird aspect, but just like doing something different that's just purely fun. And it is competitive, but like fun is the number one goal of it all.
That was for sure our goal with that contest. Yeah. I mean, I forgot those things we did, like making people finish a hot and ready. And
that needs to come back. Like
there was another one, like triple grab was on there. We had all the like Anna Nickstad's getting pissed because she can't triple grab. And it's got to be 3 different grabs. You can't just go indie.
Tail.
Yeah. But that was super good. Yeah, thanks for that question, John. Yeah. But I think that kind of answers it, right? It helps just pass the torch of the Stoke on.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Same thing that video parts do. And honestly, just posting to Instagram does nowadays. People hate on it and whatever, but it's like a kid who's just like all alone and rides at some cable that none of us really ever pay any attention to, but it's got a few features, and he's got 1 or 2 local people at his park that he looks up to, but they got full-time jobs and they're not there every day. That kid can hop on Instagram and see Trent do some crazy stuff, see Jake Flynn jump down a winch spot and feel like there's a culture, there's a community here. Like, this is something I'd like to explore as I continue to, move into adulthood.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we kind of take a little shift here and we do the Slingshot Silhouette Challenge presented by Slingshot.
This.
So it's a bit of a newer segment, but I print out a picture, which I'll put on the screen right now. And the rider is silhouetted out, so you can't see who the rider is, but the board is available.
We need to do a better job. This is Jake Flynn in the in the cut of Rockford, Illinois. I used to drive. Yeah, I used to drive past this like every day when I was delivering pizzas at Jimmy John's, working at West Rock also, and be like, man, you could do some stuff into this. This was actually a crazy clip that Jake got. It was a cab 3 into this wall. He got smoked trying it. For whatever reason, it didn't make the cut of Nature Offense. It just like didn't vibe with, or like it came in too late. Yeah. But he got posted somewhere, and it's a super cool clip. You could have teed me up a little harder.
Okay, so I was gonna do a Chris O'Shea one. And
I probably would have got that.
Okay, I should have done that one. Then I had it printed up. I was gonna do it, but all right,
is it literally printed?
Well, you would know now that it's Chris O'Shea. All right, so thank you to Slingshot for that.
So getting back today, we went and rode OWC a little bit, and something happened while we were riding OWC. So we're on the dock, just for the listeners, okay? I'm strapping in. I got my shred phones in. I'm kind of in go mode, and I just look at Hunter. He like scoots back or doesn't take a handle or something and just hits dead eye contact with me. He's like, oh, I just had to take a piss. We're on the dock at OWC. He's like about to go. Doesn't even have the handle yet. He's in jorts, like really thick jorts.
The jorts soaked it up.
And he's just laughing. And I'm like, is he serious? And I look down, and like, sure enough, there's like liquid from his dry jorts dripping down onto his wakeboard. And then a carrier comes and he disappears.
Gone I was.
How often do you do that?
I don't do that often. I really had to go. It was like I had to go. But the jorts soaked it up. So
you're saying you can't pee while you ride?
I try. I can. It takes so much focus. So much focus. And then a corner comes and it's tough.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a tough one.
All right, another one. We were riding OWC today. Also, there's a Instagram video of Hunter just swagging out in these jorts, hitting some back fives, which he'll put on. You'll notice as the clips are playing right now, he's only hitting the little kicker. You have never hit the big kicker? What's up with that?
You know what? I don't like that you call it the little kicker. I think you should say that's the normal kicker, and that the other kicker is the massive kicker. It's
literally called the small, isn't it?
It might be a medium. I don't know. I think it's a medium.
You don't even jump over the XL. You ollie over the medium.
Yeah. What do I need the XL for? Like we said earlier, I'm capping out at 900. The last time I did one was at least 2 years ago.
For reference, for people who like aren't super familiar with Hunter as a rider, he was really good at one point. We were filming at West Rock.
Had it, still lost it.
We were filming at West Rock. I watched him bust a cab 9 first tee. He spent some time in the Philippines, dude. Switch back fours all day. You know, he was on it. Fatty nose presses on broken boards.
That's the best boards to do a nose press on is the broken ones.
And now the fool just doesn't hit the big kicker. I'll tell you what, being at OWC, it was a sick crew there today. Broseph was there, Campbell was there, Trent and Gavin, few other homies, but Gavin's hurt right now, so Trent was riding, and Gavin was filming, and just like having those boys down there, like I've known them forever, and just having your homies who are ripping at the cable, like I felt obligated to hit the XL, and then I hit it and like did a front roll and a half cab roll, and was like, I'm gonna fall if I do anything else, and then just was immediately humbled with how just first of all how like ridiculously good they are, and also how just like not good I am. But it's like, bro, you just feel none of that pressure to show out when the homies are there.
I'm confident in my own skin.
Yeah, I guess I'm not. And dude,
I love the medium kicker. I love the large kicker. I'll say that. I'm not that much of a bitch. I'll hit the large. I love the large. The XL is just a step too far for me. Too far. It's too big. And I hate that they put it next to the medium because then it makes it look even smaller. I wish they just had the mediums by themselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I'm not an XL guy. I never really figured them out except for that one where I did front 9 or cab 9 at West Rock.
Yeah, that's a good XL. Yeah.
It's cab 830 maybe, but okay.
Yeah.
Next question. What do you got?
So, kind of turning the tables on you a little bit. I met Hunter when I was 17 working at Action. I rock up. It was maybe my second or third day there. And you just rock up just full of good vibes and good energy. You're just wearing like a real kooky outfit. Christmas tree.
Kit.
Yeah. He had red board shorts and a green button up. Probably with like a coastie. Like, I don't know.
No, I didn't have a coastie.
Okay, he probably had zinc on, like blue zinc.
Definitely had zinc on.
Yep. And he just rocks up. He's like, "What's up, dude? Like, you're ripping," just like saying nice things. And I'm like, "Thanks, dude." He's like, "Yeah, I'm working here too." Like, we ended on a shift together. And he's like, "It's just gonna be such a good summer." And like, I'm just real excited. And I'm like, "Sick." And I thought that was really cool. And up until then, I thought snowboarding was dope, but I'd never done it. And Hunter, I think the year before, actually went to the University of Utah and was like, and was, snowboarding every day. And that was a big part. Eventually, I would move out to California and work at ski resorts. But meeting people like yourself, you being like one of the main ones, helped inspire me. It's like, oh, people really do this. This is something I can actually do. And I know we've talked about it a little bit, but you've never dug in too deep with me about that time in Utah, your time in snowboard culture, and run me through that, right? Because, I mean, you grew up in Michigan, and then you finish high school. I assume you got in or had good enough grades to get into some schools in Michigan. What was up with the decision to go to Utah?
Yeah, I applied to 2 schools, University of Utah and Western Michigan University. I did get into both. I also applied to Michigan State University. Denied. Wasn't smart enough to get in there.
Party schools only.
Which Michigan State isn't some world-renowned education fucking place. But anyways, so I had 2 choices, Western or Utah, and I was just like, I think I'm going to go to Utah. Like, I've never lived away from home, and snowboarding's sick. Brighton looks amazing. And so that's what I did. I decided to move out there, and went to Utah. That was the decision, was just to I didn't really, school wasn't super interesting to me. But I went, and the reason was to pretty much go snowboard and go to school. That was
how often were you snowboarding, and were you still getting school done?
I was getting school done to the minimum, the bare minimum of what you could do to get by. I wasn't really learning anything, skipping a lot of class for sure, but I was getting it done. I was definitely passing. I was snowboarding a lot, I would say. I mean, definitely not every day, but more days than not in a week for sure. So yeah, I was snowboarding quite a bit.
Nice. And for those of you guys who don't know, Hunter will crush some beers, and if he sees a vape, he will hit it until he comically coughs. As long as I've known Hunter, he's never really been a weed guy, never liked weed or vibed with weed, but I remember you said you were smoking a little weed out in Utah, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I smoked weed was in high school, and my friend and I split an entire joint, which is way too much for someone who's never smoked weed, and I was driving, and I went to change the radio, and when I put my hand to change the volume, it hit the roof of the car, and I was so high. And then I went to Del Taco and held a hot dog and looked at it for 2 hours. So after that, I went to Utah, and it's snowboard culture. There's a lot of people, smoking joints and going on some hikes and stuff. And I was doing that a little bit, and I don't know. I don't think I really enjoyed it, but everybody else was doing it, and I was kind of doing it, and I was like, all right, cool, this is what we're doing. And I don't know. I was smoking a little bit, but I don't know. Not a ton. And then I quickly was like, it's just not for me. I don't really like it.
Yeah, but you always vibed with drinking?
Yeah, drinking was.
Did you feel like you were partying a lot when you were in Utah, or just normal freshman college amount?
I was probably actually partying a lot less than a lot of people in freshman and sophomore year, because I didn't know that many people, so it's I wasn't I was going out a little bit, and we found this store. I won't say the name of it because I don't want them to get busted, but they would sell you beer as long as you went in and said with confidence what your birthday was.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we were drinking a little bit, but I definitely wasn't partying that much.
Okay.
Not even every weekend for sure.
Yeah. So you were 18, 19 at this time?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just for a little context, right? Me and Hunter have known each other for a long time. When I was 17 at Action, we had some bar nights. I had a fake ID. And I really enjoyed it. Myself personally, I really like smoking weed and had smoked weed for a long time. I haven't drank or smoked weed for 3 years. It's been a really positive change for myself, but for a long time in my youth, it's something I really enjoyed, and it was cool getting to know you and someone just so immersed into board sports culture, and you essentially being no, not for me. I don't really vibe it, because a lot of the people were either kind of goody two shoes vibe or whatever. There's a better way to put that. But they didn't do anything. It just wasn't their thing. And they wouldn't hang out with people when, dinners would be had where people would party a little bit and indulge, or it felt like they kind of went all in. And obviously us both being young when we first met, we'd party and kind of go hard, but it was cool just to meet you and set the standard of oh, this isn't something you like. It's not obligatory if you want to be a part of this culture.
Yeah, definitely not. And I want kids to think that it's definitely not something you don't need to do either of them.
And it's really cool. I've been a part of scenes, in snowboarding, wakeboarding, and even now, right? I hang out with crews and people in board sports on a regular basis who do indulge, who drink a little bit, who can smoke a little bit of weed. And I don't do any of this stuff. And it was a little weird at first, especially with people who I had done that stuff with for a long time. But pretty quickly, it was just oh, cool. Dylan doesn't do that. He just comes and hangs out and shreds and still just hangs out with us. And, the thingy just goes right around him. The joint just doesn't touch his hands, and it's like, cool. And I've also witnessed a lot of like younger kids, which for me, this is interesting because the first time I was exposed to weed, I was smoking it. Like the first time I ever saw it, like I was doing it. And I see a lot of younger kids get exposed to it in this just like way more honest and healthy way of like watching older people and being able to assess like how it actually affects people. And somebody like Gibby is a great example, right? He's been coming around for a long time. He lived with me in a camper when I was consuming cannabis like every single day. And, you know, his parents knew that and were cool with that, and they trusted Gibby. He was like 14 or 15 years old at the time. And he was just able to watch the effect that it had on my life and that substances had on other people's lives and just make a decision for himself. And to this day, to my knowledge, like Gibby has a very healthy relationship with any like kind of narcotic or substance like that. And there's lots of examples of people like that when they're exposed in this more like healthy and honest way of just like, yeah, this is what it is. This is the effects it has on people. Yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. And it's not something I see, like outside of the board sport bubble often. And it's something that, I don't know. I guess I just wish I had the context, coming at it a little bit earlier. Cause like I just started using it a lot when I was like 14 and it became a really, like my main coping mechanism, and it allowed me to not develop other coping mechanisms for a long time that I should have been developing. So it's just cool to see like other people be able to vibe it out.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Take things a different way.
Yeah, I will say, I said, you know, you don't have to smoke or weed or drink or anything. There are some amazing moments made at like bars when you're drinking with your boys, and like there's a lot of, you know, fun to be had there. And yeah, it's I think you do it all in moderation, whatever you can do. And if it works for you, it does. If it doesn't, it's not a big deal. Like you can figure it out.
And to be totally fair, you know, like a young Gibby was at a lot of these events and parties and would just like go to bed at 11 and not indulge in anything. Myself, like not partaking. It's like I'm not at every single one, but I'll hang out at the bar till midnight, and then like I just drive myself home and go to bed and get a great night's sleep and wake up at 8 a.m. hydrated, feeling great, ready to go.
Hydrated, dude. Chugging waters.
Yep.
Chugging milks.
Yep. Straight up.
Sick. I think we dive into a Patreon question from Matt Gagnon.
All right.
And he's wondering if Hexagon was still open today, would they let you ride after your ban?
Yeah, I think they would. Me and John patched things up. Shout out John Bemis. Really though, on a real note, like shout out John Bemis. He was super influential in me getting into wakeboarding. He gave me a shot. He gave me my first job. He helped like, you know, kind of show me the culture of the sport a little bit and kind of school me to what was good, and just going down. But yeah, for those who didn't listen to the last episode, I did get banned from Hexagon Wake Park, which was a full-size cable in North Carolina, pretty sick one. That was my local. I went from being employed by them to not welcome on the property.
Pendulum swung hard.
Yeah, one move, pendulum done swung. But basically just me and my homie, who were like another just angsty grom, just really wanted to drill in this handrail and do a dock and hit it. And we asked, they said no. One way or another, we got some keys. We did it anyway. They found out, like very clearly, just
vandals.
Just clearly disobeying, very direct, directions to not do that.
Yep.
So yeah, we were not welcome back for a little bit. Eventually, I apologized, and my parents made sure. They're like, I don't really know what's going on with this situation, but you need to apologize. Like, you obviously messed up here. You know that, right? Yeah. And they knew that I was doing, but I was like, I had a license, and they were kind of like, it's your life, whatever. And then I blew it, and they're like, okay, you blew it. Like, admit that you blew it. Yeah. So I apologized, and a year or two later, I ended up, I rode there a couple more times after that. And then it unfortunately closed not too long after that. But that honestly ended up being one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because one, it was a good learning experience. It kind of like checked my shit at 16 of like, okay, there actually are consequences when you just do whatever you want. And then also it allowed me, because I was banned from Hexagon, my parents were a little more open to the idea of me living at Gibtopia for the summer. And that eventually turned into me living at Gibtopia for the summer under the conditions that I would come back most weekends. And I just never came back like home at all. I just lived at Gibtopia in a camper, and it was amazing. And I just hung out with my best friend at the time, Alex Timms, and we made crazy memories, and, went out to the bar that was right across the street and hung out with, pro wakeboarders who were coming through. And It was awesome.
Good
It
times.
showed me that there was just like another way to live life,
Yeah.
right? I could just enjoy time outside with my friends. And it was amazing. And honestly, I felt like it gave me a beautiful decade that I'm just kind of coming out of now. And my priorities and headspace are shifting in a different direction. But basically, from the summer when I was 16 and lived there, that's what I did. I'm 26 now. That's what I did for the next 10 years. I've worked at ski resorts in the winter, just making enough money, hanging out, boarding, working whatever job, doing park crew, and then working at wakeboard parks in the summer.
All right, so I think you're kind of teeing it up to progression of a hater, which we'll get into in a second. But before that, you mentioned we were riding at OWC, and you flew a budget airline down here, which is like $80 from North Carolina.
Yep.
So you didn't bring a board. I got to set up for you.
Yeah.
You brought your life jacket and your helmet, though.
Yep.
So how do you bring a life jacket and a helmet when your bags are full?
So this is big hack. These budget airlines, if you don't know, Allegiant, Frontier, Spirit, I know most people are like, I'm never going to touch it. And if you're an adult with like an actual job, yeah, don't touch it. You have no reason to. If you are just somebody who likes to shred and is balling on a budget and maybe has like a free pass or a buddy pass somewhere and a couch to stay on and just trying to make a weekend trip happen, Frontier is a big hub in Orlando. You can get a lot of cheap Frontier flights to Orlando. The thing is, they really get you when you bring a bag that's too big. Like, they are very strict. They make you actually do your bag, and if it's too big, they charge you like $150. Yeah, so what you got to do is, you can either pay for a checked bag, or you can just bring a little backpack that fits in the thing, and then just wear your life vest, and then put the helmet on your head. So that's what I did coming down here. Obviously, with this, you need a homie who's going to hook you up with a board or a way to get a setup
Everybody
down.
knows somebody with a board.
Exactly. And I mean, this would work with snowboarding too, potentially. You could just wear all your outerwear on the plane.
You can wear your boots because Dylan,
You can wear your
my other
boots,
friend
dude.
Dylan wore his space, or I think they were Zupac boots.
Yeah.
He wore his boots on the
Yeah,
plane.
everybody be doing it. And apparently, if you're
Full bindings.
apparently if you're going somewhere cold, John put me onto this. He put on his wetsuit because he's insane, and he's like a full-grown man with an actual job. But whatever.
Dedication or something.
Dedication. He got on the plane with his wetsuit and then immediately walked to the bathroom and took the wetsuit off.
Oh, on the plane.
Immediately. And then
Okay.
before he got off the plane, I guess he put it back on, or maybe he snapped.
you can just hold it or
yeah,
something.
maybe
You're
he just
already
snapped
there.
the photo like as he was getting on the plane.
Yeah.
That's probably what happened. But yeah, he immediately walked to the back. So that would make sense, right? If like your carry-on with the wetsuit would be too big, so you just put on the wetsuit like in the airport bathroom before you walk on the plane, go to the back, take it off, you're good.
Yeah, it's like what even on.
But
Smart move.
not legally, not recommending anybody to do this because you probably could actually die if you accidentally leave the suit on the whole flight.
Yeah,
You can get like heat stroke. That happens.
true.
If you just wear a wetsuit and it's not cold.
Well, Bill Belichick, coach of the Patriots, used to wear a wetsuit underneath his stuff so
That's
that he
insane.
didn't have to wear like all this bulky stuff.
he
He
should
just
have
wear a
just bought a
wetsuit.
ninja suit. What was he doing?
Maybe I don't know. I don't think
crazy.
he thought about it that much.
There's this story. I forget where I heard it, but Sal Masekela, the snowboard legend, announcer, just real. You know who he is.
Yeah.
He was saying the first time he went snowboarding, he went to Bear Mountain, and him and his friends were surfers, so they wore wetsuits, and his friend ended up like having to go to the ER because he like lost so many fluids because he was sweating so much in his wetsuit.
Well,
And
it's
they ended up
bare too. It's like it's not even
Yeah.
that cold. It's probably warm. It's probably 40 degrees out. It's sunny.
Yeah, I could be butchering that story, but I'm pretty sure that happened. But that's always stuck in my head. I'm like, oh, you got to be careful of the wetsuit and warm conditions.
Yeah, the helmet and life jacket hack. That's a good one though. That's an easy one.
For sure. And I mean, dude, I think it was $80 to get down here. I'm down here for 3 or 4 days. I'm staying with a buddy. OWC, if you're a member, you get, buddy passes. So if you have some friends, a lot of cables will do a deal. And two, I guess just talking about deals and being able to travel and do stuff like this for relatively cheap, if you rock up to Elevated and you like know what's good and you're somebody who loves wakeboarding, like Morgan loves wakeboarding. Morgan Batchelor, the owner of Elevated Wake Park. I mean, I'm not guaranteeing anything, but if you come to Morgan or you call in advance and it's like, hey, I'm doing this thing, like I'm going to be there for a week. He's not going to like let you ride for free for the week, but like
No, but
he'll hook you up. Like he knows the deal, right?
Yeah.
So there's cables and ways out there, if you got some friends, some places, call ahead, try to talk to somebody somewhere like OWC, probably a buddy pass would be your best route. But some of these smaller independently owned cables, like they get it. Like they know that they're not like losing money. It's like you're just hopefully going to come up there and, you know, film some stuff and get to be a part of like their vibe and their culture. And then if you can find that super cheap flight and a homie's board to ride, it's totally doable.
Yeah, don't be picky with the board you ride neither. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I rode Hunter's.
You're all right.
Yeah, I rode Hunter size 12s today. I'm like a 10.5. Yeah. But whatever. We're good.
You cinch those babies down. You're good to go.
Yep.
Yeah, all right.
Ooh, I got one for you real quick. So Hunter, how long you lived in Orlando now?
It's probably 2 years now.
Okay, 2 years. How many boat sets you've taken?
Well, I haven't been on a lake, so
Hunter
0.
has not been on a boat. In the 2 years he's been in Orlando, he hasn't been on a boat. We're doing a day in the life tomorrow, and I'm going to try to get us on a boat, maybe get him foiling a little bit.
Foiling?
Yeah. But yeah, he hasn't been on a boat. How many times have you been to Tampa?
I have not been to Tampa yet, but the Cove got hit by a hurricane. So I was going to go down there. They got hit by a hurricane. And the first day they open, I'm there. That place looks sick.
Absurd.
Yeah, Why is Tampa? What does it matter? The cable's not open.
I guess, but it's been open for a long time, dude.
Yeah,
it's been open for a minute. The last time I was here, I went to the Cove. It was sick.
Yeah, I should go. I mean, I will. I went right when they opened. Yeah, hand up. That one's on me. I'll get on the boat. I gotta get a boat board.
All right.
I could ride that O'Brien. It's 15 years old, but whatever.
Cool. Should we hit progression of a hater?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is something I was stewing on. Me and Hunter are talking a lot, and I feel like we are on a similar progression just when it comes to viewing life overall. And we are, without a doubt, self-admitted haters. We are haters.
I mean, come on. If you know me, it's like
he be hating.
No, it's
Well, at one point for sure.
Let's
if you know,
tee up the story.
Okay.
Or whatever this is.
So again, I threw down some context about when we met. I was 17 at the time. You were super early 20s. We're working at a new wake park that's run by a boat dealership. Action is an amazing place and super good vibes. Their first year open, like any new business, they're figuring stuff out, and they were taking the approach of, you know, somebody selling $100,000 products to $30 cable passes. That's not something I was used to, and I had a lot of angst in general about kind of what was going down, and also just like in the sport, right? And I'm at the time being 17, I'm like doing back threes on like some 720s. I'm doing things that are reminiscent or like to the layman look similar to what a pro wakeboarder is doing. So to me and my 17-year-old self, I'm like, bro, I'm basically a pro wakeboarder. Why is nobody paying me? What is going down here? Like, this is not sick. So this is phase one, right? This is the general starting point of almost every human being, unless you have just like amazing parents or amazing role models. And even if you have those, you still start here, like as an adult.
Yeah. So what Dylan's teeing up is like a roadmap of your progression as somebody in like maybe not even board sports culture, but like, let's just say it is. Yeah. As a human. But we're going to
relate it to board sports.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the general starting point of everybody. This is phase one. Everything is whack.
Yep.
Everything
the worst
is whack.
place to be, but a lot of people start there.
A lot of people start there. We started there.
Yeah.
We were there. And
like
I find myself there sometimes still. And like I'd be talking to people like you and other people who are further ahead in the progression of a hater and can help snap me out of it. Right?
So I guess give an example of what is everything is whack.
Let me elaborate a little bit. Basically, you just repeat anything negative that you hear about anybody that you don't specifically vibe with. So unless they've given you a reason, like they've met you, they've DM'd you, you really vibe with one of their videos. Basically, if anyone has any success that you don't personally know and hasn't given you a reason to like them and create positive brand affinity, they are whack to you. Yep. And part of this, you're blaming everything on outside circumstances and things you have no control over. That's where all of your attention is going. An example of this would be somebody puts out a really sick street video and they are wearing a helmet or not wearing a helmet, and you think it is whack because they are wearing a helmet or not wearing a helmet.
Either way, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Another thing, somebody puts out a video that they like clearly put tons of time and energy into and like just curated this beautiful thing, and you don't like the song and you're like, it's whack. I don't vibe with it. They did 6 MBDs, but I don't care. Yeah. Song's whack. Hater, you are everything is whack mode. That is not it. And like you'll catch yourself just in general, like you'll hear something that's new, you'll start to feel change, a new crew will come on the scene. And again, this is within the analogy of board sports, but this is life in general.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like everything is whack. You're exposed to a new stimulus or like a new thing, new person, you're just like whack until proven otherwise, right? Guilty until proven innocent, basically.
Exactly. That's good. Okay, so that's kind of the initial.
Yep, that's where we're starting point.
Stage one.
Yep. And yeah, so this was us when we worked at Action for the most part. Like we were cool kids. Like, you know, we had good times and talked positive things and hype people and push people off the dock. But we were talking a lot of crap about our employers, which suck. Like, that's just not a cool spot to be in. Like, now just being older and more mature, like, that's just not it. They were providing whatever. Doesn't matter.
Built a cable park is awesome.
Yeah, built a cable park. Shout out for building a cable park. And I was just being like a little shit, basically. So phase 2, all right, you start doing some shit, but other than the shit you're doing, everything else is still whack. Right? So this was us when we started filming our first movie, ZMT Tape. Yep. So we filmed the whole thing on mini DV tapes as a homage to, you know, the VX1000 parts that are so prevalent in, I think that you got a tape up there, but that are so prevalent in skateboarding. And we're like, it's going to be mostly street. It's going to be so sick. And basically we decided to get off our butts and start doing something about it. And we planned out this movie and we did it. And we filmed the movie and it was sick and it was cool. And honestly, phase 2 in that era of our lives was a pretty good place to be, because when you start doing some stuff, even if what everybody else is doing is whack, at least you have something else to put your energy into, right? You're putting your energy into what you got going on. And then the leftover energy is spent being like, that's whack.
That's a great way to put it. The leftover energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is not much because you're putting a lot of effort into what you're doing.
Yep. So this is absolutely like a step in the right direction as of progression of a hater. And I mean, outside of board sports, right? Like, you start going to school, you start caring about your appearance, your hobby, getting good grades, getting the job you want. And then all of a sudden, like what Sally's doing with her life matters way less.
Yeah.
What what song they used in their edit matters a lot less. The fact that this person grabs their indie nose bones like at the boot just doesn't matter as much, because we're getting kicked out of spots all day.
Yeah, and I guess the way you're saying progression of a hater is like a really good way to encapsulate it, but I at least never hated anybody. I never was like, I hate that guy. It's just like, if somebody asks you about him, you'd be like, oh man, like they did this, it was whack. Like that's your, like, it's not like I hate you. Like it never was like that for me.
No, it's for sure just poking fun at a negative mindset.
Yeah.
This is just progression of a human going from a negative mindset to just pouring all of your energy into trying to move things forward yourself. And maybe there's for sure levels above where I'm at right now and where you're at right now. And maybe when I come on in 3 more years, we'll talk about that.
All right. So that was stage 2. You're doing something.
Yep. Phase 3. So since you started doing some shit, you realize shit is really hard to do. And you have more empathy for other people. But there's still a few things that you are 100% positive are whack. And you're still blaming outside circumstances. Maybe not fully. Maybe you started putting a little more energy into yourself. But basically, for us, we created a movie. It was sick. Everybody liked it. But we realized, like, wow, these are not pro caliber tricks. The filming did not look that good. It was real. Like, we had some show outs at premieres, which were sick. But that was just because people knew us. Like, it could have been even worse than it was. And people would have still showed up. And you just realize, like, wow. Stuff is really hard to do. Like, anything is hard to make when you like actually sit down and like
put effort towards it.
Just fulfill an idea. It's really difficult. So you realize, like, shit is hard, and you just start to have more empathy for people. It's like, that song is whack, but like, let me just not focus on that. And he like really went hard on like doing all this and creating all this stuff. Like, that's super cool. But there's still a few things that just really grind your gears. And you're like, but he's doing it wrong still.
And I think at this part, you're starting to understand that, like, let's use the song example, where it's like, that song I didn't like, rather than that song is whack. Like, you're starting to begin to get there where it's like, but just because I didn't like the song doesn't mean it didn't fit with the part, or it didn't, like, was edited well to it. Like, you're starting to beginning to get there where it's like, oh.
And the thing is, you just start to completely reframe how you think about stuff. So instead of having the thought, I didn't like that edit, it's not like you're lying to yourself and you're like, I did like that edit, or someone else liked that edit. You just catch yourself, because still in all of the phases, and like, I'm still in this, my initial thought is like, this is change, it's whack, I'm a human, and it's outside of what I can predict, so like, I don't like it. That's my initial thought, like, I hate this song, this is stupid, da-da-da. And then immediately the thought that comes right after that is like, you know what, this is really sick that they made this video and that it's contributing to the sport of wakeboarding, and that they were just able to be a human being and just like do something they love and create this part. So it's not like fooling myself into like liking the part. It's just completely changing where my thought pattern goes. And it's just like, I'm just hyped that this exists.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. And then it's like, dude, I like that song like back in the day. It's like, then I'm just like, it does kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Like I actually do like this part. And again, it's not like lying to myself, but you just come at it from a different frame. Yep. So yeah, that's phrase 3. We're moving in the right direction. And I mean, this was literally just like as I was on the toilet, just like hitting some phases type vibe.
Yeah.
But then we got phase 4. You start to realize how valuable your attention and energy is and pour it more inward. As a result, you care less about other people and what they're doing. You still don't agree with everything. You just don't take personal offense or put energy into most things. However, there might still be a few things that get you going, and you have healthy ways of venting them, which is where we're at now. But basically, the overarching picture of this is your attention is focused in the beginning almost solely on other people and what they're doing, and in a negative way. Because if it was in a positive way, it would just come inward super fast. And it's just moving to more of like pouring all of your energy inward, right? Like reflecting on what you got going on, how you can make a change. And then instead of thinking like, this is whack that there's no money for prize money in this contest, right? Instead of that thought, because that thought's just not helpful. That's not productive. What does that do? The only way and context in which that thought is productive, if it's followed by something that's
here's
actionable.
how I'm going to make that change.
Here's what I could do potentially. Yeah. Like, let me post to my Instagram that I'm here. Like, that could be one thing that's like super chill and super easy. Like, let me just promote this event so more humans know that it's happening.
Yeah.
And then obviously a bigger thing would be like, well, who do I know that has money that would potentially enter, and then your brain starts going in that way.
Yeah.
So you still have the thought like, man, it sucks that there's not more money, prize money for this contest. And then it goes to like, how could I create like a world or an environment where there would be more money for this?
Change that.
Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of where we're both at right now. We're both in like the action step of like you creating your podcast, me trying to, do stuff with my own business and provide value to brands, and just taking a new approach and just like pouring stuff inward and just being more actionable with what we got going on.
Yeah. I think the progression of a hater is a very interesting thing because it's very like, I mean, dude, you'll see it wherever you are, at the cable, at the skate park, when you're snowboarding. It's like everybody.
Dude, just the default is
everything's whack, and it sucks, dude. Like it sucks because that's just not fun. That's not fun. Like it's
not productive.
It's doing nothing for anybody.
It just makes you less excited to live in the world. And I mean, obviously, right? We're talking about this within the context of board sports, which are like kind of silly. And it's like these examples we're giving, like, oh, you don't like a song, like who really cares? But this framework is applicable to everything in life. Like if you really think some political stuff going down is whack, or some current event stuff, or you just think the world we live in is horrible with attention spans going away and people being on their phones more and AI is really scary, it's the exact same thing. It's just starting from like, everything is whack. There's all these things that I can't control, and I'm going to pour all my energy into just like talking about and expressing about how they're whack.
Yeah.
But when you can pour it inward and just be like, what can I do? How can I like acknowledge that this is what's going down and like find my place within it? Life just becomes, you just get more optimistic. You're more excited to live life and just share it with those around you and to progress into a better human being. And it's freaking cool. And it's just rad that we're able to grab these like metaphors and life lessons from this silly board that we ride.
Yeah.
It's sick.
It is silly. It's so wide. I rode a snowboard and then I went to the wakeboard and it's like,
it's
so
wide.
fucking
yeah,
wide, dude.
Being on the solo for a while and then getting back on the Volt, because Hunter had a Volt, 58 volt, big dog. I was riding that today. I'm like, ooh, it takes a minute to get from edge to edge. It'd be boaty.
It is, dude. Yeah, and I went from that 58 volt and I was riding that for a little bit, and then I got a 55 tau and I was like, damn, this thing's pretty thin. Like I'm quick heel to toe, It's like, that was a total tangent there. But all right, so I mean, that was good on progression of a hater. I think we got a Patreon question here from Rich Wheeler, and he's wondering which events we're looking forward to most in 2025.
Nice. So, yeah, I got a couple that I'm pretty stoked on, and I might just take all of yours right now, but
I think
you're more plugged in with the
I have
scene.
one that you probably don't have. So
okay, cool.
You go first.
I'm really excited about Bro Stock's coming back this year.
Easy.
Let's go. I've never been to Bro Stock, but I was a 13-year-old kid who would watch the web edits of whatever. Those web edits were what they were, and it really hyped me up as a 13-year-old boy to just be like, this is sick. This is what wakeboarding is, and I'm watching like Wake Brothers, and it's like staged parties and stuff, and I'm like, this is sick.
You're believing it. You're
yeah.
like,
So, I don't know. I'm going to
yeah.
appreciate it in a different way than I would have at that age, but it's just really cool to see it come back around.
Yeah.
And then Also, potentially like going out to LAO and, maybe helping with some event coverage out there. I went to Vasseski Langenfeld with Jake when we were out there for Wakeboard Street Jam. We did a little trip afterwards. We actually put out a movie called Magnetic. We may get into that next. But Langenfeld was so sick. And just a really cool cable, but I've never been there when they're having that event. You have, and I would love to experience that. So if that's something I get to experience, I'm hyped up.
Yeah.
And and then if Wakeboard Street Jam happens again, I'm sure it'll just be bigger and badder. So hype for all. Those are all things I got on my mind.
Yeah. I got one that is making a return this year, Plastic Playgrounds.
Oh.
I like with laser, so I'm excited to see that one. Like I feel like when those events were popping, I was like just kind of getting into wakeboarding. I wasn't fully understanding like who the names were and all that stuff. So I'm excited to see that make a return because that cable's crazy.
That's gonna be sick. I mean, I have just vivid memories flashing back in my head of like Brenton Priestley blasting up the quarter pipe, doing like a sick indie poke, coming back down, and people just hitting this quarter. Like quarter pipes just don't seem like they worked all that well in wakeboarding. But man, people were sessioning them in a plastic playgrounds back in the day, and then obviously like. Trent and Gavin and like Rudy and just the people who have the torch now and the Peacocks are able to like put down on that just crazy amount of plastic is like, yeah, that's like super cool to watch. And like, I'd be going back or sometimes, like Trent's run will pop up on my YouTube algorithm and like, I'll give it a watch and I'm like, that's crazy, bro. He's doing like 60-foot full poles, like 6 of them in a lap.
Yeah.
Like,
and then kicks it off with a kicker or ends it off with a kicker trick.
Dude, anybody who's watching this show who rides cable, like has the longest feature at their cable, and you know how good it feels to nose press it. Yeah. Just 50 it. Just get through the whole thing. Even if you just run into the safety and you make it to the end, you're like, that felt amazing. Yeah. Dude, like the most technical tricks on these like super long features and like going from transfer to transfer, just how dialed you have to be on the tension, like it's extremely impressive.
Yeah,
it's
sick.
Is.
Yeah, so I'm very excited for that one. I mean, there's a lot other ones, but yeah, those are some good ones, especially on the cable side of things. So cool, excited to see that. I guess we'll bang it out with the 2 last Patreon questions here, and then we can hit into some other stuff. So we got one from Dan Jarrett, and he's wondering what are the biggest things that need to change for wakeboarding to be healthy / grow as a sport, especially in the U.S.
Yeah, so I think the timing of this question is really good, kind of piggybacking off what we've been talking about. And for myself, it's a lot less looking outward. Now, there are positions in which it totally makes sense to ask these questions and to elaborate on these questions. Daniel Jarrett is the owner of West Rock Wake Park. As the owner of a cable park, he attends the WSIA summits. He's in conversations with people like John Dreiling on a regular basis about how to grow the sport. I think it totally makes sense to ask and elaborate on these questions to try to figure it out. For myself, because that's the perspective that I have, I kind of refer to my progression as a human being and as a hater. And it's like, I'm just going to look inward. What can I do? Like, if we have the opportunity to help cover Langenfeld Open or Brostock, I want to crush that. The other thing I want to do is I'm making new friends in my local area that's close to my local cable park, Elevated. I'm trying to get those people out there. I'm trying to get my roommates on the water. I'm trying to just get back to pushing boards off the dock. And that's what I can do. And could I do more and think bigger? For sure. But just figuring out all the priorities that I have going on in my life and what makes the most sense. I think just looking inward about what I can do. And those are all things that seem manageable for me right now. So that's what I'm most excited to help the sport progress forward in a healthy way. And honestly, like this show and coming on and being able to talk about some things just about life in general and like my progression and the things that boarding and the people within it have taught, like I'm super excited to contrip to the positive growth of wakeboarding in that way as well. Just like the people who make it bigger, through us, not just bantering all day. Yeah. And then also too, I think just continuing, like almost just adjusting the time horizon on which we're measuring, right? To just accept like, it might take like generations, like of humans to get where we want to go, right? Because I was influenced by some things, and then market trends aside, like those things influenced me to be excited to contribute to the sport through films and events, and now like event coverage of bigger events. And hopefully that inspires some other, young Groms that are hyped on the scene to do the same, and it just keeps moving forward, right? I think until that dies, we got a good thing going.
Yeah. I think also to piggyback off that is like finding the lane of what you can do realistically to help the sport of wakeboarding. Like talking about us doing media stuff, coverage, getting more eyeballs on it. That's where I feel I can have the most impact. Whereas, let's say a wake park owner, like I would say focus on making the most, profitable and successful wake park you can to make your business sustainable, to be around forever, and then eventually grow and maybe get another location or whatever. Like that's what I would do if I was a cable. If I was a pro, I would do something totally different. Like, all these different people have their own avenues where it's like, it's not a blanket solution for everybody. We just come together and like, oh, we're all going to push more people off the dock. It's like, well, what are each group best at? That's kind of where you need to focus. So it's
I love that. And that hypes me up because I pushed a lot of dang people off the dock.
Oh, yeah.
It was really cool, too, because, I worked at quite a few cables the first season Elevated was open. So, like the younger guys there at the time and just the people, right, like I don't think Hannah had ever worked at a cable. She like worked her camp, so she kind of knew what was good with teaching, and obviously she was really good at teaching people. But Jake Flynn, Ethan Weaver, they're like younger at the time, and I can tell that they're like picking up on the tips that I'm giving people pushing off the dock, tips that I picked up from Daniel Jarrett, John Bemis, Alex Hamrick, Clark Davis, like all these just super influential park owners and people in the sport that I spent time at. Scott Fuerta, like these people that have been teaching wakeboarding for a huge chunk of their lives, and I was able to take information from them, and then I was able to go to a cable and I wasn't in a frame of mind to like teach anybody or like lead a team, but just most of the people who come down to the dock when I'm driving like make a lap. Like you just notice that. And Jake and Ethan like aren't idiots, and they're kind of like, oh, like Dylan says some good stuff, and then they pick up their own thing and they got their own vibe, and then there's a whole new crew who watch how Jake teaches someone how to wakeboard, how and then also getting Clark back in the mix, and like it's really cool to see that come full circle, and like he taught me a lot of what I got going on, and then he's able to come back a few years later, and that's really cool just to see it continue to progress. But that just hypes me up, right? You talking about like what you can do, and it's like pushing someone off the dock seems simple, but it's like I just love doing it, and I've done it so much, and I feel good at it, and it just makes me feel useful. Like, is it the most useful I could be? Probably not, but working a full-time job, having another career, and my priorities in other places, being able to drive 30 minutes to the cable, take a lap with headphones in for an hour and 15, say what up to all the homies, push a few friends off the dock. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we got one last Patreon question here from TJ Geesey, and he's wondering what inspired the Working 100 Days Straight Challenge, and how has it affected your goals and overall outlook on life? So he's following along.
Yeah, I love it.
Locked in.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So for those of you guys who don't know, I basically just declared to the universe via Instagram that I was going to work 100 8-hour days straight and post it to social media. The steam ran off pretty quick, but since I've been posting like a picture of a stopwatch that I keep track of my own time, some days are better than others. Some are, days when I have an email pulled up and I'm just watching a Bombhole episode for an hour and letting the clock run. Like, oh, crap, get clock back in. Yeah, I guess what inspired it, just like, I'm like, dude, what am I doing? Like, what do I want to do this winter? Like, I really just want to focus on this goal that I have, which is becoming the person that is required to be able to support myself as a freelancer and as a business owner, and just do the things I need to do and figure out the skills that I need to learn. And then as far as how it's kind of affected where my head's at, one, it's just really nice because I wake up on a Sunday morning and it's not like, oh, what am I going to do to, it's just like, oh, I'm just like working like every other
crank
day.
out another 8 hours.
Yeah, cool. And honestly, the biggest thing it's done is just made me aware quicker than I think I would have been otherwise how deficient I am at so many skills that are necessary to get where I want to go. And while that's incredibly crippling and depressing and makes me want to eat ice cream and not get out of bed for 4 days, at the same time, once I get over that, because I got to work that day, it's like cool. Like life's just a creative canvas, and like I have just this thing that I really want to paint, and I have no idea how to paint it. So it's like, what do I need to get to start? It's like, well, I probably need to learn some new brush strokes. Okay, now I need to learn how to mix these color paints. Oh, I don't even know how to use oil paints. Like I don't know how to mix this stuff up. Like I need to learn that whole skill. That's going to take months to learn. And now all of a sudden, this thing that I thought I was going to imagine and just paint, it's like, oh my God, there's so many like sub skills that I need to learn to get where I'm trying to go. And that's a really cool thing. It's like seeing wakeboarding, like watching Trent do a Trent trick and be like, that's really cool. I'm trying to do that. And like really be like, I'm determined and I want to do that. And then you land your first back 5 and you're like, oh my God.
I got a long ways to go.
That's how hard that's about to be. Are you kidding? Holy smokes. So that's kind of how I'm feeling there and how the
chipping
overall
away at
vibes
it.
are. Yeah, we're just chipping away one day at a time. You know, and I'm my own boss, so I'm counting this right now. I'm letting people know I do video services. I do what's up? If you need some marketing, social media management, paid meta ads, SEO, stuff like that, that's stuff I specialize in along with event coverage. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, we're able to count this whole podcast. So
good question.
Edited some stuff for a client on the way down on the plane. So
there you go. Yep. All right. I mean, that's all I got. So that's what do you got on there on your sheet?
Yeah.
For the listeners, we both got sheets in front of us.
Yeah, we both got sheets.
He came in hot.
Okay, so I got maybe a little more stuff to dive in, like podcast wise.
Okay.
So I guess one thing that is just kind of funny. Me and Hunter have conversations basically exactly like this, maybe a little more bullshitting, but on like a weekly basis. Yeah. And I'm not the best homie. I maybe listen to like 10 Grab Matters episodes. I just listen to business podcasts all day long. So I talk to Hunter and I see that so-and-so is on the pod and he goes through all this work to like build the studio, rent out a room for it, put it up on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And I'm like, so how'd the episode of Gavin go? Like, I just expect him to give me the cliff notes. How's that make you feel?
Yeah, so I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way because I love talking about the podcast and I love when people ask me questions about it. And please ask more. Like, I think it's awesome to talk about. But it is funny when someone will be like, hey, how did so-and-so's episode go? And kind of start talking about it. And in my mind, I go, man, that was so long ago. I already edited the... grab another spin drift. All right, I already edited the whole episode. I did all the research for the episode. I uploaded the episode. I did all the short form content for the episode. I did the audio editing for the episode. So like my time spent on this episode and listening to this person and editing what this person had to say is, many, many hours. So yeah, there's no good way to say that, but it's just like, yeah, if Dylan asked me, hey, how'd the Gavin episode go? I'll be like, well, just fucking listen to it, dude. Like, I don't know. I edited it. I did all this stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's just funny. I don't know. It's not a negative thing or anything. It's just funny.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess another one to kind of piggyback off that, right? Anytime you're doing something that people are invested in or part of their thing, they have their take, they have their advice. Talk to me a little bit about, just people giving their opinion, like, whether it's on the technical side of things of like, oh, the lighting should be like this, you should balance the audio more, you should ask these kind of questions, you should talk more, you should talk less.
Yeah.
What's the progression of the feedback been like? And yeah,
there's definitely been a lot of feedback, which is good. And I welcome all feedback because it's, feedback is feedback.
Means people are caring too.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, there's definitely some good things that I've heard from people in terms of like audio levels, and I'll listen and I'll be like, yeah, like I did kind of mess this part up way back then or whatever. But yeah, I just kind of take everything with a grain of salt, I guess, because I do have the vision of what I want this to be, and I don't ever want to be like a cocky asshole where I just ignore what people have to say. I'll always listen to what people have to say, and I love hearing feedback. But I do have a vision for it, and I want to stick to that vision. And if I kind of listen, if I take everybody's advice and I listen to everybody, this thing it'll get off the track real quick and it'll be like, what the fuck's going on now?
Yeah.
So
what's the quote? Like, don't know the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everybody.
I'm pretty sure that's what Chris says on the bottom hole.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like, it's very true. And like, I'm like starting to kind of think about that. So yeah, that's definitely something that has gone through my head. For sure.
So for those that don't know, there's 2 other board sport. I mean, there's lots of other great board sport podcasts in the world, but I think Hunter's model most closely represents both the 9 Club and skateboarding and the Bomb Hole and snowboarding. Both great shows, both totally worth checking out, whether you
100%.
participate as a skateboarder or snowboarder. What's it been like taking influence from those shows and also trying to balance, not just like ripping them off, right?
Yeah.
Even though you're doing your own thing in your own lane, in your own industry, what's it been like trying to find that balance?
Yeah, it is tough because it's like, I guess there's no such thing as like original art, right? Where it's like nothing is original, and like the idea of a podcast isn't original. And once you do a podcast in a board sport or something like that, it's going to be compared automatically to the other one that was there first in a cooler, quote unquote, industry like snowboarding or skating or surfing or whatever. And so it's just kind of like, I don't want to copy what anybody else is doing. I'm trying to do my own thing. You take inspiration from those. And I also take inspiration from traditional sports media, like Pardon My Take and Spit and Chicklets and stuff like that too. So yeah, I try to just limit my intake of their stuff because I don't want to subconsciously become, a total copy of something else. And so I kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, I do love the Bommel and I love Nine Club. So it's like, I want to listen to a lot of them. So it's tough not to, I don't want to copy anybody. I want to do my own thing. But like, yeah, it is. I try to draw inspiration from a ton of different places. So.
100%. And I think that totally makes sense. And it kind of sounds like you're coming at it from, excuse me. We're hitting seltzers. Like, come on.
Crushing seltzers.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're coming at it from a first principles framework, which is essentially, it's just basically like breaking things down to the fundamental principles that help build them up, whether it's an idea or a business model or anything like that, right? But you're taking all this inspiration and the ideas that have been built from other shows and other things and other people and just figuring out like, from the ground up, like what can I do better? What's the unique thing I can bring? What do I have to bring to the table? Yeah. Right.
Yeah, definitely. And like, it's also cool to see that like I'll listen to and follow, Pardon My Take, which is a big sports podcast in America. And a lot of what they do is just straight up not applicable to like a wakeboard industry type podcast. And same with snowboard, skateboard, surf.
Yeah.
Like there are things that are, but a lot of them aren't because they're just totally different industries that they work totally differently.
Yep.
So it's cool to like, yeah, I'll see stuff in Pardon My Take or Barstool, and it's like, well, I can't pull exactly what they're doing because it just won't work, but I can use it to think of something else to, create something. So
it is interesting too, like some of those more mainstream shows that you just mentioned, like they have, I think Pardon My Take's like an hour or two, like every single day or like 5 days.
It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, yeah. And then a bunch of other content on top of it, too.
So they're talking about a bunch of stuff other than mainstream sports, right? Like they're building the brands of just them, being themselves, almost replacing like what, morning radio used to be for a lot of people. So I think it's super cool to see you build your brand and people start to associate the show with you and just get to know you and people to recognize you at the park that, maybe you haven't met before. Like that's sick.
Yeah, that's weird. It's not like I'm like nothing. Yeah. Like come up and say hi to me. If you ever see me, just come up and say hi.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. This is I'm happy that this one didn't slip my mind. This is something we talk about a fair bit, and we hit on it earlier talking about kind of like, how do I make money in wakeboarding and then shifting like how do I provide value to brands? Yeah. But right. You can pretty much get a free deck from any brand that you want, and you have some that you work with multiple board companies that support the show that have shown you love and you've shown them love. And, we almost blew it and didn't talk about the unit feature. Your boy Hunter and the Grab Matters podcast has a signature unit feature.
Yeah, we out here, dude. We out here.
A signature unit feature. So, when you were trying to learn Cab 9s, like, did you see this happening, maybe down the line, like something like a collab graphic or something like that happens, but maybe just talk about the shift of approach. And it's like, it's just easier to get support when you're not just doing what everybody else is doing. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. You gotta provide your own like unique value, and it's the jury can decide what value I'm providing. I'm not going to say what I am, but like, yeah, you do something that is different in the sport. Like it's, like you were saying earlier, like you learn back 10 or you film a new part, it's like, why am I not sponsored now? It's like,
and you can take your own lane as a rider, like somebody in the cable scene, like Alex Albach or Wesley Mark Jacobson, who has very clear style and a very clear lane. You can also take a lane like you did, right?
Or like JB did, or like Thomas Herman is doing. Like there's all these different avenues that people are going, you know what? I don't think the traditional route is going to work for me because it might be outdated. It might just not be my style, whatever reason it is.
Yep.
Or it might just be harder to do because you got to be better. So you just do a different avenue. Not to say that any of those guys aren't good, but they're obviously very good. But yeah, you got to find a different value and a different way to provide that value, and unique way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. So for the listeners, I'm about to grab this crazy 3D printed challenge rail that John Dreiling helped make, and we're going to talk about this new Grab Matters unit feature.
Yeah, so I guess we'll tee it up. Unit's a sick company, obviously, and they make a bunch of rails, and they've teamed up with Space Mob in the past and made some really cool stuff. And yeah, it's going to break when you put down the mounting thing that it was mounted on. No, it won't stand up on its own. We can hold it. I haven't tried. Anyways, so yeah, I just kind of started talking with John and David and just figuring out, a feature that I'll hold it. We're good. Oh no, it will stay. Look at that. Nice work, John. John built this rail, so kind of stumbling around this. But anyways, so I was lucky enough to be able to, or fortunate enough to be able to work and, come up with some designs. And I do love snowboarding. And in snowboarding, it's a thing to have a quote unquote challenge rail, which for those who don't know, it's just a rail that's a challenge to get to the end of, I guess, a challenge to complete. So this is the embodiment of what I thought that would look like floating on the water. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to ask questions on it or what do you got here?
So looking at the dimensions and everything, seeing the 3D render, you wanted to base it off of there's a Z rail at Action, right?
Yes.
What other cables have that? Isn't there one in Florida that has one maybe?
I don't.
Okay, well,
Whatever,
if you've ridden
it's a
Action
zero.
Wake
I'll put a
Park,
picture in.
yep,
Yeah.
there's a Z rail. And Hunter kind of wanted to base it off of that, but make it even gnarlier. So essentially, it's got kinks in it. How thick is this handrail up top? Is it like compared to maybe like the pool gap in OWC?
It's pretty similar to that pool rail.
Cool. And then
It's a little bit narrower.
Yeah, and it's slappy style. So how tall is this rail going to be? Like 3.5, 4 feet?
I'll put the dimensions. I don't know the full dimensions on it. So
yeah,
of the height.
Yeah, and we got multiple sections, obviously. So this first section right here, and then a nice like elbow. And for the listeners, we have slappy potential for days. Jake Flynn is going to destroy
Eat this thing alive,
this unit, bro. I mean, just all sorts of different lines and different stuff that can potentially go down. And
yeah, and for the listeners, I'll explain what the rail is. So it's got elbows and up and down kinks everywhere. So it's 100 foot long, a rail. It starts off by going straight, then it elbows to the right, and then it elbows to the left and up, and then it goes down, and then it goes left, and then it goes right again. So it's kind of hard to hear
for the
it.
people who just like had no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah.
This clip's going to be up on his Instagram with some photos, and I don't know, he'll figure out some way to make it, whatever. John will make a 3D rendering or something.
Yeah, we got one.
But it's just super sick challenge rail, and I don't know, is it? Obviously it's super cool and you kind of hit your due diligence as far as like, oh yeah, like unit's super sick and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. But is it kind of hilarious that you have a pro model rail?
It's fucking hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
gonna put this unit back
put
on
it
the
back.
wall
It
if
is
you wanna hold it.
hilarious, dude. But I think it's the way it breaks apart is super sick. John rendered up a bunch of different hacking potential options or whatever. Like, yeah, you could do so much with it. And even just fully put together a 100-foot rail, if you even just 50-50 this thing all the way to the end, it's going to feel amazing. And that was the goal, is to make the goal is to make a rail that's hard to get to the end of. That's the goal. And, I hope that goal gets realized. And, if you ever want it, just hit up Unit. All right. So I think we take a little turn. And before we wrap this up, we kind of talk about kiting a little bit, because you're down here in Florida. We're doing some wakeboarding, but you've done a lot of kiting.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, Dylan just put on the fucking stupidest hat I have in the studio. It says I got wasted at Applebee's on it. So yeah, let's talk about kiting, because you worked at Real for years, few years. So
I'm going back out there for a little bit to
Okay,
still
you are.
actively working on and off. Yeah, I'll be out there the month of May. If you're trying to learn how to kite, hit me up. I got you. So Real Water Sports is this facility in Cape Hatteras, the Outer Banks of North Carolina. It's just real good kiting, pretty solid surf, really good surf in the winter and the fall and the spring, and, okay in the summer, especially for East Coast surf. And it's essentially a kiteboarding school and retail shop. And I went and worked there with zero experience learning or knowing anything about kiting. And this is definitely a theme throughout my life, is when I do something, I go all in. Currently, that is business. When I moved to California and learned how to snowboard, I couldn't ride switch. I could ride a snowboard and make a turn. We'd taken a couple family trips, but I'd never hit a rail or anything. And I moved to California and worked and started a job at a ski resort. Very similar trajectory in kiting. I moved out to the Outer Banks. They have employee housing out there. It was really sick setup. I had a friend of a friend I knew who recommended it. And I ended up out there. I worked in the rental shop for a season and a half and just learned how to kiteboard. I'm now a kiteboard instructor out there, and I'm just taking my love of boarding and expanding the horizons, and it's so sick. So you can do kiteboarding a bunch of different ways. You can basically ride a wakeboard with sandal straps. You can literally ride a wakeboard and do air tricks, basically, which was really popular in the scene down here. It's actually called wake style, and maybe we'll dive in a little bit more when Gav's on the shop talk tomorrow or next step about that stuff. But and then also you can ride a regular surfboard, so a strapless surfboard in the waves, or even just
That looks sick.
Yeah, or even just like do airs with the wind pushing the board into your feet, or do both, ride waves and do airs, and it's just so cool. It's like the backcountry of wakeboarding, like 100%. That is how I feel. Yeah, and it's when the ocean's big and you're kite surfing, if you put your kite down in a wave and a wave takes it, there's a really good chance that's going to rip your kite and your session's going to be over and your $2,000 piece of equipment is going to be ruined or very close to it. And it's just not going to be a good situation it's just not. So you got to be on it. You're like trying to have fun and push yourself and do new stuff. And next thing you know, an 8-foot wave is making you do 14 front flips and just pummeling your face into the sand, and you got to try to steer a kite and figure out which way is up. So actually, when your face is hitting the sand, it's kind of nice because you know exactly which way is up, and you can figure out how to steer your kite to keep it up. But when you're just doing front flips, you're like, oh God, I have no idea which way up is. I know the kite is that way. Hopefully this is not the water. And then sometimes you'll feel the line slack, which means you picked wrong.
You're toast.
You're toast.
Yeah.
And it's super fun. It's something I love. I've also been getting into foiling on the wing sport side of things. So you can kite foil, which is super fun. And then also wing foil, which, you see some people do. I know Gunther's into it. And then also surf foiling. Gunther's into that as well. There's, a few wake athletes who are pretty prestigious. Like Noah Flegel is crazy with the foil. And
he just landed, what was it, MED backflip foil?
Yeah, a strapless
backflip
in the surf. Insane. But I've just fallen in love with the ocean. I have never really been in or around the ocean on a regular basis in my life before spending time in the Outer Banks. And it's just truly a healing place. And for me, it was super cool and healing. I was literally coming off a broken leg when I spent my first season there. And it was just so good for me to be just outside and in the ocean more. And then, just learning all the different sports and having like a new realm to progress in that maybe wasn't super physically risky. Like obviously kiteboarding super physically risky. I've taken some of the worst slams I've ever experienced as a human doing those things, but you can keep it chill and still progress because there's like new sports, there's like smaller waves to ride. Yeah. There's all these different things, but when we worked at Action, Action is a wake park in Grand Rapids, so Western Michigan, and there's a kiteboarding retail shop. They maybe do lessons, but I don't think so. But anyway, there's a scene there, and there's this place called Mac Kiteboarding, and there's this guy who used to come. His name was Nate. I don't think he still works at Mac, but he essentially said, like, if you want to learn how to kiteboard, I got you. Like, you work at Action, I got you. And I never took him up on it. And ever since, I was really regretting it, and I was really excited to go to Rio and to get to do that. So if you do have the opportunity to do any wind sports, whether it's sailing, anything foil-related, winging, kiteboarding, like absolutely, I recommend that you do that, and because it has changed my life in such a positive direction, and it's also allowed me to identify a little bit less as a wakeboarder and just as like a human who really enjoys being outside and doing physical activity. Yeah. And boarder. It's sick. I'm a boarder. I like snow, like whatever. Like I grew up playing hockey. Like I'll hit the skate park in some blades. I never have, but I've been wanting to.
I can't blade. I'm not good. I guess I never know. I've never tried. Yeah. I mean, that was good insight on the kiting side of things. I think it's very fascinating. It's cool to see some of the, or I guess unique to see some of the, wake athletes like Gunther and Noah getting more into that, and like Noah obviously not getting into it. He's been into it, and he's just absolutely insane.
And I mean, Gunther's super talented too. Like I have spent time living in the ocean doing that, like as my career, teaching other people how to do it. And Gunther, in his free time as a professional wakeboarder, is considerably better than me at all things foil related, just like in his free time. And I know that's like tied in with his career a little bit, and he's got some brand deals, but that's impressive.
The kid's good, dude.
He's focused, so no doubt.
Absolutely. Well, all right. I think this was a good one. We ran this one pretty good, and got into some stuff that was wakeboarding, some non-wakeboarding stuff. I think it was a good chat. Yeah. Appreciate you coming on. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap this up here?
Yeah, I mean, just shout outs. If I was listening to this episode, I've already would have clicked out. I don't do outros.
No, yeah, me neither.
Who does? Yeah. If you're still listening, that's crazy. Just big shout out to Elevated and the crew in North Carolina. Morgan Batchelor building that park has shaped my life so significantly. I mean, I think it just comes down to people. If you're one of the people, you're probably mentioned in this episode. If not, you know who you are, but just a few people, like a dozen people, have made decisions that have changed my life so significantly, and they don't seem that big. Starting a wake park, offering employee housing at a kiteboard school, starting the kiteboard school, just these little things, these little actions. So just like do what you're trying to do, and I think you're going to have a big impact. And back to Dan's Patreon question, right? How do we set the sport up for success? Essentially, that was the essence of the question, I think. You just keep doing these little things and just don't underestimate the impact that, you know, you can have as an individual, like business owner or not, because a small handful of individuals have had such a profound impact on my life and shaping the way I view things. And my parents too, for sure. Like, shout out them. My mom was saying, I said I was coming down here. And she's like, cool, let me know when the episode drops. And like, I'd love to listen. She's like, unless you don't want me to listen to it, then don't tell me. But no, you can for sure listen to this one, Mom, if you made it all the way to the end. That's crazy.
If you like outros too, Mom.
Yeah. And shout out.
Speaking of
Maureen,
outros,
shout out
how
Todd.
about you take us out of this episode? You since you love outros so much.
Yeah,
Take us
true. That's it. We're out. Peace.